In the quiet rhythm of the body, beneath the steady rise and fall of the breath, there exists an invisible language. It travels in pulses and waves, in soft electric signals and gentle currents that never rest. Even as you drift towards sleep, this language continues its conversation, flowing from the brain to every organ and limb, through an intricate lattice of nerves that weave through you like threads of light. This is the nervous system, a vast, living network that binds the body into a single, responsive whole. At its center lies a slender cord of remarkable design, the spinal cord, silent yet endlessly active, carrying messages that make movement possible, that summon sensation, and that preserve balance without conscious thought. The nervous system is sometimes described as the body's communication highway, but the metaphor scarcely captures its elegance. It is not merely a system of transmission, but of interpretation and command. The brain receives, deciphers, and instructs. The spinal cord conducts and coordinates. The peripheral nerves deliver information to and from the outermost edges of our being. Together, they create a unified orchestra, one that performs ceaselessly, adjusting every muscle, every heartbeat, every breath, with perfect timing and care. When you think of your body, you might imagine bones, muscles, and organs, the tangible parts that can be seen and touched. But the nervous system belongs to a subtler realm. It is the unseen foundation of experience, the interface between the physical and the perceptual. Every sensation of warmth or pressure, every motion of the hand, every calm or startled thought, all are born from its activity. In the simplest terms, it is the system that allows the body to know itself. At the heart of this system lies the spinal cord, a soft column of nervous tissue that runs from the base of the brain down through the protective tunnel of the spine. To imagine its importance, one might picture a delicate instrument string stretched through the center of the body. It is both resilient and sensitive, both protected and deeply connected. Within it, thousands upon thousands of nerve fibers ascend and descend, linking the distant regions of the body with the brain, ensuring that sensation and motion are bound in perfect dialogue. The spinal cord, despite its modest size, about as thick as a finger and little more than 45 centimeters in length, in an adult performs a role so fundamental that its absence would silence nearly every voluntary act. It is the bridge between thought and action, between awareness and motion. Through it, signals from the brain travel outward, activating muscles, adjusting posture, and regulating the organs. In return, sensory information from the skin, joints, and internal structures flows back toward the brain, painting a constant picture of the body's state and surroundings. This exchange occurs so quickly, so continuously, that we rarely notice it. When you touch something smooth or cold, your hand knows it before your mind fully registers the sensation. When you stand upright, countless small adjustments in muscle tone are made automatically to keep you balanced. Beneath each of these moments lies the spinal cord's hidden labor, a coordination so seamless that it gives rise to the illusion of effortlessness. The cord itself is organized with quiet precision. Its outer layer, composed of white matter, carries bundles of nerve fibers, axons, wrapped in a fatty sheath called myelin, which allows impulses to travel swiftly along their roots. Deeper within lies the gray matter, shaped like a delicate butterfly in cross-section, where neurons connect and relay information. Here, signals are processed and integrated, allowing reflexes to occur without direct instruction from the brain. This independence is one of the spinal cord's most remarkable qualities. Though closely connected to the brain, it can act on its own when immediate action is required. This is most apparent in reflexes' rapid, automatic responses that protect the body from harm. When you touch a hot surface and your hand withdraws before you have time to think, that movement is orchestrated within the spinal cord itself. The brain, momentarily bypassed, receives the message only after the action has already taken place. In this way, the spinal cord embodies both speed and wisdom, a built-in guardian that ensures survival through instinctive motion. Yet, even as it operates in these simple circuits, it participates in the larger harmony of the nervous system. Every reflex, every adjustment of muscle tone, feeds into the ongoing dialogue between body and brain. The spinal cord may act independently, but it never truly acts alone. Within the protective shelter of the vertebral column, the cord is wrapped in layers of meninges, the dura mater, the arachnoid mater, and the pia mater, each layer cushioning and shielding it from harm. Between them flows cerebrospinal fluid, clear and gentle, carrying nutrients and removing waste. It is a quiet river within the body, ensuring that even the most delicate tissues remain nourished and balanced. The spinal cord begins where the brainstem tapers, at a region called the medulla oblongata, and descends through the spinal canal to about the level of the first or second lumbar vertebra. Beyond this point, it gives rise to a bundle of nerve roots called the cauda equina, Latin for horse's tail, which continues downward to supply the lower limbs and pelvic organs. From its entire length, 31 pairs of spinal nerves emerge, passing through openings between the vertebrae to reach their destinations throughout the body. Each pair carries both sensory fibers, which bring information in, and motor fibers, which send instructions out. This duality, sensory and motor, input and output, defines the spinal cord's essence. It is both a listener and a messenger, an instrument of perception and of action. Every region of the body, from the fingertips to the soles of the feet, is mapped within it in exquisite detail. If one could trace these pathways, they would form a perfect anatomical chart of communication, a living atlas of sensation and motion intertwined. In the great economy of the body, the spinal cord's function is quiet but indispensable. It does not think as the brain does, nor does it feel emotion or reason, yet without it, thought could not move the hand, and emotion could not quicken the heart. It is through the spinal cord that ideas become gestures, that intention becomes motion, that perception becomes response. Imagine, for a moment, the stillness of deep sleep. The conscious mind drifts into silence, but the spinal cord continues its ceaseless rhythm. It regulates posture, maintains breathing, and coordinates the reflexive actions that sustain life. Even as dreams unfold, this slender column remains vigilant, ensuring that the heart beats, that the diaphragm moves, that every cell receives its quiet instructions. It is a watchful caretaker in the night, working without rest, so that the mind may wander freely. As the lecture unfolds, we will explore this structure more deeply, how its regions are organized, how signals travel within it, and how reflexes emerge from its circuits. We will see that the spinal cord is more than a conduit of impulses. It is a center of wisdom, a repository of ancient responses that have guided living beings for millions of years. From the simplest reflex arc to the most intricate pathways of sensation, it represents the body's enduring balance between thought and instinct. For now, it is enough to rest in the awareness of its quiet labor, a central thread running through the fabric of the self. Beneath every breath, beneath every soft pulse of the heart, the spinal cord hums gently, connecting the outer world to the inner one. It is the body still center, a living bridge between awareness and action, and even in silence, it is always speaking. 2. Beneath the spine, the cord's hidden path. Deep within the sheltering architecture of the human skeleton, a slender column of living tissue lies concealed. It extends downward from the base of the brain, encased within the stacked bones of the vertebral column, and for all its fragility, it carries the essence of connection. This is the spinal cord, a structure so vital that every thought, every motion, though rarely noticed, it is the foundation upon which all coordinated movement rests. an elegant conduit linking the body's periphery to its command center. To picture the spinal cord, imagine a pale cord of tissue about as wide as your little finger, gliding smoothly within a protective tunnel of bone. It begins at the base of the skull, where the brain narrows into the medulla oblongata and continues its descent through the hollow channel formed by the vertebrae. These vertebrae, stacked one upon another, form a column that is both strong and flexible, able to bear weight while also bending gracefully. The cord itself is suspended in a cushion of cerebrospinal fluid, a clear liquid that bathes and protects it, absorbing the subtle shocks of movement and maintaining a constant environment for its delicate nerve cells. Along its length, the spinal cord is not uniform. It subtly widens in certain regions where clusters of nerves branch outward to serve the limbs, the cervical enlargement near the shoulders, and the lumbar enlargement near the lower back. From these areas emerge dense bundles of fibers that will become the nerves of the arms and legs, extending outward to animate motion and return sensations from the world beyond the skin. Below the lumbar enlargement, the spinal cord tapers gently into a slender thread known as the conus medullaris, which gives rise to the cauda equina, a bundle of fine nerve roots that fan downward within the spinal canal, resembling the tail of a horse in both form and name. Each vertebra in the spinal column cradles this living cord with remarkable precision. The vertebrae themselves are not solid pillars, but intricate structures of bone with openings that align to form the vertebral canal. Between each pair of vertebrae lie soft, resilient intervertebral discs that act as cushions, allowing movement while protecting the spinal cord from compression. These discs, along with the curvature of the spine, absorb the shocks of walking, running, and daily motion, ensuring that the fragile cord within remains undisturbed. The vertebral column is divided into regions, each corresponding to a portion of the spinal cord. In the neck, 7 cervical vertebrae form the uppermost section, graceful and relatively small, allowing the head to move in multiple directions. Beneath them lie 12 thoracic vertebrae, each anchored to a pair of ribs, giving the middle back its characteristic rigidity and stability. Below the thoracic region are 5 lumbar vertebrae, larger and stronger, designed to bear the weight of the upper body. Further down still is the sacrum, a fused plate of bone connecting the spine to the pelvis. And finally, the coccyx, or tailbone, a small vestigial structure marking the lower end of the spinal column. Within this bony corridor, the spinal cord occupies only about 2/3 of the total length. It ends roughly near the first or second lumbar vertebra, but the nerves that extend from it continue downward, filling the canal like the strands of a flowing braid. These nerves exit the spine through small gaps between the vertebrae called intervertebral foramina, spreading outward in symmetrical pairs to reach the farthest corners of the body. In total, 31 pairs of spinal nerves emerge from the cord, each corresponding to a specific region: 8 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and 1 coccygeal. Each spinal nerve is a mixed structure containing both sensory and motor fibers. The sensory, or afferent, fibers carry information inward from the skin, muscles, and joints. The gentle pressure of fabric, the warmth of sunlight, the stretch of a muscle in motion. The motor, or efferent, fibers carry signals outward from the spinal cord to the muscles, commanding them to contract, to move, to maintain posture. Together, these twin pathways form a perfect circuit of communication, connecting the external world to the inner one. When viewed in cross-section, it reveals an outer layer of white matter and an inner core of gray matter. The white matter is composed of axons, long, slender extensions of neurons, arranged in ascending and descending tracks. These tracks function like bundled wires, carrying messages up to the 2020 brain or down to the body. The gray matter, located in the center, contains the cell bodies of neurons, forming regions that handle the integration and coordination of signals. It is here, in the gray matter, that reflexes are born, processed, and completed, entire reactions unfolding in less time than it takes to draw a breath. Each side of the spinal cord mirrors the other, divided by shallow grooves known as the anterior and posterior fissures. The central canal, a narrow passage running the length of the cord, carries cerebrospinal fluid and maintains internal balance. The cord's surface is wrapped in three protective membranes, or meninges, each with a distinct character. The outer dura mater is thick and durable, providing structural defense. Beneath it, the arachnoid mater forms a delicate web of fibers. And between this layer and the innermost pia mater lies the subarachnoid space, filled with the fluid that cushions and nourishes the nervous tissue. The pia mater itself clings intimately to the surface of the spinal cord, following every contour and vessel, like a fine silk veil over living light. When one considers this structure as a whole, the bones, the membranes, the fluid, the nerve tissue, it becomes clear that nature designed it for both strength and sensitivity. It is not merely a conduit of impulses, but an organ of balance, an instrument of continuity. It allows you to lift your hand without conscious effort, to withdraw from danger before thought arises, to maintain your posture as you breathe and drift toward rest. Even the smallest gesture, like turning your head or adjusting your fingers, depends on this invisible dialogue between brain and cord, between command and response. Because of its importance, the spinal cord's protection is absolute. The bones of the spine form an armor, the meninges a soft cushion, the cerebrospinal fluid a gentle moat. Yet within this fortress, the cord remains tender, easily disrupted by injury or disease. A blow, a fracture, or even a swelling of nearby tissue can interrupt its communication, silencing entire regions of the body below the point of damage. And yet, even in such cases, the cord retains traces of its wisdom. Reflexes may persist even when the connection to the brain is lost, continuing their automatic rhythm in isolation, like echoes of a once-whole melody. The quiet marvel of the spinal cord lies in its dual nature. It is both physical and electrical, both biological and symbolic. It unites the tangible and the unseen, the flow of ions across a membrane, the contraction of muscle fibers, the awareness of touch, all fused into one continuum. Without it, the brain's thoughts would remain suspended, unable to reach the world. The body's sensations would rise unheeded. As the body rests, the spinal cord remains alert, carrying the steady pulse of information that sustains life. It is the living thread that ties movement to intention, thought to form. Even as you lie still, it is working, adjusting your breathing, balancing your position, maintaining a quiet readiness. Within its hidden path beneath the spine, it listens and responds, a guardian that never sleeps, ensuring that every part of the body continues to speak the language of life. And so, though unseen, it is always present, a silent companion, following the curve of your back, whispering through your nerves, watching over you as you rest. Beneath the spine, it lies calm and luminous, the hidden path of connection between mind and matter, still carrying its ancient rhythm, one pulse at a time. 3. Layers of protection. The spinal cord, though soft and delicate, is among the most vital structures in the human body. Every breath you take, every motion you make, every fleeting sensation from the skin to the inner organs depends on its uninterrupted communication. Because of this central role, the body has evolved an intricate system of protection, a layered design so complete that it guards the cord from harm while allowing it to remain supple and responsive. It is not enough that this structure carries life signals. It must also be preserved from the jolts, pressures, and hazards of movement. Around it, nature has built a sanctuary of bone, membrane, and fluid, each layer serving in harmony to cushion, support, and defend. Encased within the vertebral column, The spinal cord rests in a channel that is both strong and flexible. The vertebrae, those stacked bones of the spine, form the first and most visible layer of defense. Each vertebra has a hollow center, and together these openings create a continuous tunnel called the vertebral canal. This bony corridor is precisely shaped to house the cord and to shield it from direct impact. The shape of each vertebra reflects its place and purpose. The cervical bones in the neck are slender and agile, allowing graceful motion. The thoracic bones of the upper back are broad, firm, providing anchorage for the ribs. And the lumbar bones in the lower back are thick and weight-bearing, supporting the upper body's mass. Though solid, the spine remains flexible, its joints and discs allowing it to bend, twist, and absorb the subtle shocks of daily life without transmitting those vibrations to the cord within. Between the vertebrae lie the intervertebral discs, soft pads of cartilage that act as cushions, absorbing pressure and preventing bone from grinding against bone. They also maintain the spacing that allows spinal nerves to exit safely through openings on either side. These discs, resilient yet pliant, contribute to the gentle sway and elasticity of the spine as a whole. Around the vertebrae, layers of muscle and connective tissue add a dynamic protection, contracting and relaxing with every movement, stabilizing posture, and ensuring that the spinal column maintains its alignment. Yet the body's defense does not end with bone. Beneath the vertebral canal, a trio of delicate membranes wraps the spinal cord itself. These are the meninges, the dura mater, the arachnoid mater, and the pia mater. Together, they form a triple veil of security and nourishment, keeping the nervous tissue both shielded and sustained. The outermost layer, the dura mater, is the strongest. Its name means tough mother, and it lives up to it, a dense sheath of fibrous tissue that encloses the spinal cord like a sleeve. It is anchored firmly to the inner walls of the vertebral canal and extends outward along the spinal nerves as they exit, forming protective sleeves around them. Within the dura lies a narrow space known as the epidural space, filled with veins, connective tissue, and a cushion of fat. This space serves as an additional buffer, softening external pressure and temperature changes. Beneath the dura lies the arachnoid mater, named for its resemblance to a spider's web. It is a delicate, translucent layer that forms a loose envelope around the spinal cord. Thin strands of connective tissue extend downward from it like filaments of silk, connecting it to the layer below. Between the arachnoid and the innermost pia mater lies the subarachnoid space, one of the most important protective zones of all. Here flows cerebrospinal fluid, a clear, gentle liquid that bathes the spinal cord and brain alike. This fluid serves many functions. It cushions the cord against mechanical shocks, maintains a stable environment for the neurons, transports nutrients and waste products, and helps regulate pressure within the central nervous system. Cerebrospinal fluid is continuously produced within the ventricles of the brain, circulating downward through the central canal of the spinal cord and the subarachnoid space. It is reabsorbed into the bloodstream at roughly the same rate it is formed, maintaining a delicate balance of volume and pressure. The effect is like that of a quiet current constantly moving, constantly renewing. Within this serene liquid, the spinal cord seems to float, nearly weightless, protected from the hard boundaries of bone. If a sudden movement occurs, a stumble, a fall, or even the impact of a heartbeat, the cerebrospinal fluid diffuses the force, preventing damage. It is a natural suspension system, ensuring that the fragile tissue within never collides directly with the walls that enclose it. The innermost layer, the pia mater, is a fine and tender membrane that adheres intimately to the surface of the spinal cord. It follows every contour, dipping into grooves and wrapping around vessels that nourish the cord. It is through the pia that tiny blood vessels branch outward, carrying oxygen and nutrients to the neural tissue. Without this steady supply, the cells of the cord could not survive, for nerve tissue is highly sensitive to any interruption of blood flow. The pia mater also gives rise to small extensions called denticulate ligaments, which attach the spinal cord laterally to the dura mater, securing it in the center of its canal and preventing it from swaying or twisting as the body moves. At the lower end of the cord, the pia continues as a slender thread known as the filum terminale, anchoring the cord to the base of the spinal canal and keeping it gently taut. Together, these layers form a perfectly balanced system of protection and support. The dura provides strength, the arachnoid and its fluid provide cushioning, and the pia delivers nourishment and stability. They exist in harmony, ensuring that the spinal cord remains both safe and functional, capable of transmitting countless signals every second without interruption. The importance of these layers is reflected in medical practice as well. Physicians can safely access the subarachnoid space through a procedure known as a lumbar puncture or spinal tap to obtain samples of cerebrospinal fluid for diagnosis or to deliver medications that must reach the central nervous system directly. This practice demonstrates how deeply the protective architecture is understood and respected, a system so well designed that it can be entered without harm when care and precision are used. If one were to imagine these protective layers visually, they would appear as concentric rings of care, each one softening the world's potential harm before it could touch the fragile thread of life inside. The bones shield against external blows. The meninges cushion internal movement. The fluid carries away vibration and nourishes the living core. It is an exquisite balance of hardness and softness, strength and flexibility, containment and flow. All of this serves a single purpose: to preserve the uninterrupted passage of electrical signals within the spinal cord. Those signals are fleeting, almost unimaginably fast, but their reliability depends on physical stability. A single misalignment, a sudden compression, can alter the course of those signals, changing the way the body moves or feels. It is for this reason that every layer of protection matters. From the outer vertebrae to the inner pia mater, the entire system acts as one seamless guardian, ensuring that the communication of life proceeds undisturbed. Even as you lie still, the spinal cord is held safely within this architecture, surrounded by the gentle movement of fluid and the steadfast embrace of bone. You may turn, breathe, or shift in your sleep, but the cord remains tranquil, cushioned within its soft river of cerebrospinal fluid, unaffected by the world's motions. It is a marvel of natural engineering, a fragile organ given the security of armor, a delicate instrument that can endure a lifetime of motion. And so, beneath the spine, these layers continue their quiet vigil, protecting the central thread of consciousness as it hums gently through the night. 4 regions of the spinal cord. The spinal cord, though slender and continuous, is not uniform from top to bottom. It is a single structure, yes, but one divided into regions, each with its own quiet purpose and unique relationship with the body it serves. This organization is not arbitrary. It reflects the arrangement of the body itself, with nerves branching outward to specific areas, carrying both sensation and motion to precise destinations. Like the keys on a long instrument, each region of the spinal cord contributes its own tone to the harmony of life, and together they form the complete melody of movement, balance, and awareness. When we look at the spinal cord as a whole, we can imagine it as a living cable running from the base of the brain to the lower back. Along this route, it is divided into 5 main regions: cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and coccygeal. Each region corresponds to a particular group of vertebrae and gives rise to spinal nerves that serve distinct parts of the body. The organization is beautifully symmetrical on each side of the cord. Nerves emerge in pairs, one for the left, one for the right, ensuring that every sensation and every motion has its mirror. These nerves do not overlap randomly. They follow an orderly pattern, forming a perfect map of connection from head to toe. At the uppermost part of the spinal cord lies the cervical region, named for the neck. It begins just below the brainstem and extends through the first 7 vertebrae, known as C1 through C7. 8 pairs of cervical nerves emerge here, though there are only 7 bones. A small reminder that the body's design does not always follow strict arithmetic, but rather the needs of function. These cervical nerves control many of the movements we take for granted: the motion of the neck and shoulders, the lifting of arms, the flexing of elbows, and the fine control of fingers. The uppermost nerve pairs also send branches to the diaphragm, the broad muscle that governs breathing, ensuring that even the simplest act of inhalation is seamlessly coordinated. It is no accident that the cervical cord is one of the most important and densely packed areas of the nervous system. Its signals sustain not only movement but life itself. Beneath the cervical section lies the thoracic region, which corresponds to the 12 vertebrae of the upper and mid-back. Each of these 12 vertebrae connects with a pair of ribs, creating the protective cage that shelters the lungs and heart. The 12 pairs of thoracic nerves that arise from this region extend to the muscles of the chest, abdomen, and back. They regulate posture, help maintain the position of the torso, and assist in breathing by controlling the intercostal muscles, those slender bands of tissue that move the ribcage with each breath. The thoracic nerves also provide sensory input from the skin of the chest and abdomen, allowing you to feel the warmth of sunlight on your back or the gentle pressure of a hand against your ribs. Unlike the cervical and lumbar regions, the thoracic cord does not have a significant enlargement because it does not need to send dense networks of nerves to the limbs. Instead, it serves as a stabilizing and supportive center, quietly maintaining the rhythm of respiration and the alignment of the trunk. Below the thoracic segment lies the lumbar region, named for the lower back. This is where the spinal cord begins to thicken again, forming the lumbar enlargement, a region dense with nerve cells that send and receive signals to and from the legs. 5 pairs of lumbar nerves arise here, corresponding to the 5 large lumbar vertebrae, and their reach extends downward into the hips, thighs, knees, and lower legs. These nerves carry the impulses that allow walking, running, bending, and standing upright. They also transmit sensations from the skin of the legs and feet, the coolness of grass, the firmness of the earth beneath your toes, the gentle weight of a blanket. The lumbar cord serves as the bridge between stability and motion, allowing strength to be balanced with coordination. It is one of the busiest regions of the spinal cord, constantly sending messages back and forth between the brain and the powerful muscles that move the lower body. Descending further, the sacral region lies just below the lumbar cord. Here, the spinal cord begins to taper, narrowing as it approaches the base of the spine. 5 pairs of sacral nerves emerge from this region, passing through the openings in the fused bones of the sacrum. They branch outward to serve the lower legs, feet, and much of the pelvic area, including the bladder, intestines, and reproductive organs. These nerves play an essential role in balance and coordination, but they also govern reflexes that maintain bodily control, the automatic regulation of urination, defecation, and certain reproductive responses. Much of this activity happens without conscious awareness, yet it is vital to the stability of internal systems. The sacral cord thus bridges the voluntary and the involuntary, the outer and the inner, linking the body's lower limbs to the quiet functions of its core. Finally, at the very base of the spinal cord lies the coccygeal region, the smallest and most modest of all. It consists of a single pair of nerves that serve a limited area near the tailbone. Though seemingly minor, even this region participates in the balance of the body's posture and the sensitivity of the lower spine. Together, these 5 regions form the entire spinal cord, a continuous but specialized structure, each section tuned to its own domain of function. When viewed from within, the spinal cord reveals subtle changes in shape as it passes from region to region. The cervical and lumbar enlargements, as noted, are slightly thicker, reflecting the abundance of nerve connections needed to control the limbs. Between them, the thoracic region is slimmer, its tasks more evenly distributed. The arrangement of gray and white matter also varies in the cervical region, where communication with the brain is heaviest. White matter dominates, filled with ascending and descending tracts. In the lower regions, where local reflexes play a greater role, gray matter expands, accommodating the nerve cells that manage direct, localized control. Each spinal nerve emerging from the cord divides almost immediately into branches, or rami, that carry signals to specific regions. The dorsal branch serves the back, while the ventral branch extends toward the limbs and front of the body. In certain regions, these ventral branches interweave to form networks called plexuses, intricate tangles of nerves that redistribute fibers into new combinations, ensuring redundancy and precision. The cervical plexus, for instance, supplies the neck and shoulders. The brachial plexus extends to the arms and hands. The lumbar and sacral plexuses serve the legs and pelvis. These networks demonstrate nature's careful design. No single nerve serves an area entirely on its own, reducing the risk that one injury could silence an entire region. Each spinal nerve receives input from a specific band of skin known as a dermatome. If one were to trace these dermatomes across the body, they would form a series of overlapping zones, each corresponding to a particular spinal level. This arrangement allows doctors to determine which part of the spinal cord might be affected by injury or disease simply by observing changes in sensation. A patch of numbness or tingling on the skin is not random, it is a message from within, pointing to a precise level of the spine. In this way, the spinal cord is both a physical and a functional map of the body. It mirrors the arrangement of the human form, segment by segment, region by region, creating a continuous correspondence between structure and function. Every movement, every reflex, every subtle awareness of pressure or temperature is routed through its regions. The division into cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, and coccygeal sections is not merely anatomical. It is a reflection of the body's logic, a living diagram of its own organization. When the body moves, the spinal cord moves with it, flexing and stretching slightly within its canal. Though it appears still, it is in gentle motion, gliding with each breath and step. The regions remain distinct, yet they operate as one, their boundaries dissolving in the flow of communication. The cervical region senses, the lumbar region acts, the thoracic region stabilizes, and together they create a seamless whole. Even now, as you rest, the signals continue their journey through these regions. The pulse of the heart, the rhythm of the diaphragm, the adjustment of muscles to keep your posture balanced. Each region contributes its part, quietly and faithfully, in the endless choreography of the body's inner life. The spinal cord may be divided in the dar, but its purpose is unity to keep all parts of the body connected in harmony, from the highest thought to the smallest reflex. And within that harmony lies the deep calm of continuity, the still presence of a system that never sleeps, carrying the essence of life from one region to the next, moment by moment, pulse by pulse. 5. The white and the gray. If one could gaze into the spinal cord and see it in cross-section, the sight would be both delicate and astonishing. At the center of this soft column lies a figure shaped like a butterfly or a spread pair of wings. This is the gray matter, a region dense with neuron cell bodies where processing and integration occur. Surrounding it is a lighter zone, the white matter, formed of countless fibers that carry messages up and down between the brain and the body. Though subtle in color, this distinction between white and gray represents one of the most fundamental divisions in the human nervous system. Here, within this slender column, communication and control intertwine in perfect harmony, a silent choreography of electrical impulses and chemical signals that keeps the body in motion and the senses alive. The gray matter at the core of the spinal cord is so named not because it is truly gray, but because of its cellular density. It contains the nuclei of neurons, the living centers of nerve cells, along with dendrites, glial cells, and unmyelinated fibers. It is the region of integration and coordination, where information converges and decisions are made about what action to take. Within this gray butterfly, each wing or horn has a distinct function. The dorsal horns, positioned toward the back, receive sensory information entering the spinal cord from the body, signals from the skin, muscles, and joints, carrying sensations of touch, pressure, temperature, and pain. The ventral horns, toward the front, are the sites where motor neurons originate, sending impulses outward to stimulate muscle contraction. Between them lies the intermediate zone, which contains interneurons, the connectors that link sensory and motor neurons together, allowing reflexes to occur with astonishing speed. Surrounding this central butterfly is the white matter, gleaming softly under a microscope because it is composed primarily of myelinated axons. Myelin is a fatty sheath that insulates nerve fibers, speeding up the transmission of electrical impulses. It gives the white matter its pale color and its name. The axons within this outer layer are arranged into columns or funiculi, the posterior column at the back, the lateral column on each side, and the anterior column toward the front. Within these columns lie bundles of nerve fibers known as tracts, each one serving a specific direction and purpose. Some tracts ascend, carrying sensory information upward to the brain. Others descend, delivering motor commands downward to the body. The ascending tracts form the sensory highways of the spinal cord. They convey a remarkable variety of information: the position of a joint, the texture of a surface, the temperature of the air, the sharpness of pain. The dorsal columns, for instance, carry fine touch and proprioceptive information, allowing you to know the position of your limbs without looking. The spinothalamic tracts carry pain and temperature sensations, helping you respond to danger before injury occurs. These sensory pathways travel in orderly patterns, each nerve fiber connecting to specific regions of the brain, ensuring that every part of the body has its own distinct representation within consciousness. The descending tracts, by contrast, are the roots of command. They originate in various motor areas of the brain in the cerebral cortex, the brainstem, and other centers of control, and extend downward through the spinal cord to reach motor neurons in the ventral horn. Through these tracts, the brain instructs the muscles to move, the glands to secrete, and the body to act. The corticospinal tracts, for example, enable voluntary movement, the lifting of an arm, the writing of a word, the turning of the head. Other descending pathways modulate reflexes, adjust muscle tone, and maintain posture and balance, ensuring that motion remains smooth and coordinated. Between the gray and the white lies no sharp border, only a gradual blending where axons emerge from neurons and join the surrounding tracts. This borderland reflects the seamless communication between local processing and long-distance signaling. Within the gray matter, neurons receive and interpret. Within the white matter, they transmit and deliver. It is an elegant partnership, one that allows the spinal cord not only to relay information but also to act upon it. In the center of the gray matter lies the central canal, a narrow passage filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Though tiny, it is a remnant of the spinal cord's early development, when the nervous system began as a hollow tube. This canal continues the flow of cerebrospinal fluid from the ventricles of the brain down through the spinal cord, maintaining a stable internal environment and cushioning the delicate tissues from within. Around this canal, the arrangement of gray and white matter varies depending on the region of the cord. In the cervical and lumbar enlargements, for example, the gray matter is thicker, reflecting the increased number of neurons needed to control the limbs. In the thoracic region, where fewer muscles require control, the gray matter narrows. Similarly, the amount of white matter is greatest near the top of the cord, where sensory and motor fibers from all levels converge, and gradually decreases toward the lower regions as fewer tracts remain. Every fiber within the white matter is precisely organized. The spinal cord's architecture follows a pattern of perfect symmetry, with left and right halves mirroring each other. The anterior median fissure and posterior median sulcus divided into equal sides, ensuring that signals to and from each half of the body remain distinct yet balanced. Within this design, each tract follows a consistent pathway, and each pathway serves a specific purpose. Some carry impulses quickly, protected by thick layers of myelin. Others move more slowly, allowing subtle gradations of information to be conveyed. The result is a system capable of both speed and nuance, of reacting instantly to danger and simultaneously processing the fine textures of sensation that define experience. At a deeper level, the relationship between white and gray matter reflects a balance between automatic and conscious control. The gray matter governs reflexes, those rapid, involuntary actions that occur without the need for thought. The white matter, on the other hand, connects these reflex centers to the higher regions of the brain, allowing awareness to follow and adjust them. When your hand touches something hot, for example, the reflex to withdraw originates in the gray matter of the spinal cord, acting before the signal even reaches the brain. A fraction of a second later, the white matter carries the message upward, and you consciously register the sensation of heat and pain. This sequence, though nearly instantaneous, shows how reflexive action and conscious awareness cooperate to protect and guide the body. In this way, the white and gray matter are not merely anatomical features but partners in a delicate dialogue. The gray matter listens to the body's signals, interprets them, and produces immediate responses. The white matter carries these responses outward and upward, ensuring that the whole organism acts as one. Without the gray matter, the spinal cord would be little more than a bundle of cables, transmitting messages without understanding them. Without the white matter, the brain would be isolated, unable to extend its will beyond the skull. Together, they form the living architecture of responsiveness, one that allows the body to move gracefully, to adapt swiftly, and to remain aware of itself at every moment. If we imagine the spinal cord as a tall tower of communication, the white matter would be the elevators, carrying messages up and down at great speed, while the gray matter would be the control rooms on each floor, processing information, issuing commands, and maintaining local order. The entire structure depends on both the efficiency of transmission and the wisdom of response. Even now, as you rest, this partnership continues its work without pause. The white matter carries impulses from the brain, adjusting heart rate and respiration, while the gray matter quietly oversees reflexes that maintain posture and stability. Electrical signals ripple through both regions in silent waves, crossing synapses, releasing neurotransmitters, coordinating the body's quiet harmony. This unending communication, invisible and inaudible, sustains every aspect of life: the faintest breath, the slow drift of thought, the steady rhythm of the heart. In the stillness of the body, the spinal cord's architecture remains luminous in its purpose. The white matter ensures movement, the gray matter ensures meaning, and together they embody the dual nature of all living systems: energy and control, transmission and comprehension. They are the light and shadow of the nervous system, inseparable and eternal, working in concert beneath the spine's protective arch, preserving the quiet miracle of connection that defines what it means to live. 6. The spinal nerves. From the quiet depths of the spinal cord arise 31 pairs of pathways that reach outward to every part of the body. These are the spinal nerves, delicate yet powerful conduits of sensation and movement, linking the central nervous system to the outer world. Through them, the brain and spinal cord extend their influence to muscles, skin, and organs, forming the vast network that allows life to function in exquisite harmony. Without them, the spinal cord would be an island of thought without touch, a silent river without tributaries. Through these nerves, every heartbeat, every motion, and every faint shiver of awareness finds its root, returning again to the center in a loop that never ceases. Each spinal nerve is a marvel of biological design, emerging in perfect symmetry from either side of the spinal cord. There are 8 cervical nerves in the neck, 12 thoracic nerves along the upper back, 5 lumbar nerves in the lower back, 5 sacral nerves near the pelvis, and 1 small coccygeal nerve at the base of the spine. From the tips of the fingers to the soles of the feet, every patch of skin and every muscle fiber belongs to one of these territories, each connected to its own spinal nerve and its corresponding segment of the spinal cord. A spinal nerve begins not as a single strand, but as 2 separate roots that emerge from the cord, the dorsal root and the ventral root. The dorsal root carries sensory information into the spinal cord. It is composed of fibers that transmit signals from sensory receptors in the skin, muscles, and joints. These signals can be as simple as the awareness of touch or as complex as the subtle sense of position that tells you where your limbs are even when your eyes are closed. At the base of the dorsal root lies a small swelling known as the dorsal root ganglion, a cluster of cell bodies belonging to sensory neurons. Within this ganglion, each neuron acts as a miniature transmitter, gathering signals from the periphery and relaying them inward to the spinal cord. The ventral root, by contrast, carries motor commands outward. Its fibers originate from motor neurons within the gray matter of the spinal cord, specifically from the ventral horns. These neurons send their long axons outward through the ventral root to reach muscles, where they form connections that enable contraction and movement. When a motor neuron fires, it releases a burst of electrical energy that travels down its axon to the neuromuscular junction, where it triggers the release of neurotransmitters. These chemical messengers cross the narrow gap between nerve and muscle fiber, initiating the cascade that leads to motion. In this way, every deliberate movement from a blink to a stride begins as a whisper within the spinal cord, carried outward through the ventral roots. Where the dorsal and ventral roots meet, they merge to form a single spinal nerve. From this junction onward, the nerve becomes a mixed pathway, carrying both sensory and motor fibers. This union represents the completion of a circuit, the return of outward command and inward sensation to a shared root. Once formed, the spinal nerve travels outward a short distance before dividing again into smaller branches, or rami. The dorsal ramus turns toward the back, serving the muscles and skin of the posterior trunk, while the ventral ramus extends forward, supplying the limbs and the anterior portions of the body. Some of these ventral rami interweave in complex networks known as plexuses, where fibers from different spinal nerves intermingle before distributing to their destinations. This weaving ensures redundancy and balance, so that no single injury can completely silence a limb. The major plexuses of the body are 4 in number. The cervical plexus lies deep within the neck and gives rise to nerves that control the diaphragm and muscles of the head and shoulders. Among these, the phrenic nerve is perhaps the most vital, as it governs the act of breathing by stimulating the diaphragm to contract. The brachial plexus, located near the shoulder, extends branches into the arm, forearm, and hand, allowing for the remarkable precision of movement and touch that defines human dexterity. Lower down, the lumbar plexus serves the front of the thigh and the abdominal wall, while the sacral plexus, which includes the great sciatic nerve, supplies the back of the leg and the foot. Together, these networks ensure that the body moves as a unified whole, with strength balanced by sensitivity. Each spinal nerve, though small, is composed of thousands of microscopic fibers bundled together. Within its sheath, these fibers are grouped in fascicles, each wrapped in a thin protective covering of connective tissue. Surrounding all the fascicles is another sheath that binds them into a single nerve. This layered structure gives both flexibility and resilience, allowing the nerve to bend, stretch, and glide along muscles and bones without damage. It is a living cable, one that carries electricity not through copper or wire, but through the pulse of ions crossing delicate membranes. The outermost layer, called the epineurium, protects against friction and external pressure. Within it, blood vessels weave through the tissue, supplying oxygen and nutrients to the nerve's interior. The signals traveling through these nerves are astonishingly fast and precise. A sensory impulse can move at speeds up to 100 meters per second, racing from a fingertip to the spinal cord in the blink of an eye. Motor signals travel just as swiftly in the opposite direction, ensuring that the body's responses remain almost instantaneous. This speed is made possible by the myelin sheath that wraps many of the nerve fibers. The myelin acts as insulation, allowing the electrical impulses to jump from node to node in a process known as saltatory conduction. This leapfrogging motion conserves energy and accelerates transmission, enabling the nervous system to operate with exquisite efficiency. Despite their speed and complexity, the spinal nerves function without conscious thought. They are the body's silent messengers, endlessly active whether the mind is aware of them or not. When you reach for a cup, the spinal nerves in your arm coordinate dozens of muscles, adjusting the tension of each so that your grip is firm but not crushing. When you walk, nerves in your legs balance contraction and relaxation in a rhythm that carries you smoothly forward. Even as you rest, spinal nerves continue their work, maintaining posture, regulating the tone of muscles, and conveying the subtle sensations of pressure and temperature that shape your awareness of the body's place in space. Each region of the spinal cord contributes to this symphony of function. The cervical nerves, as mentioned, control movements of the neck, shoulders, arms, and hands, while also carrying sensory input from these areas. The thoracic nerves maintain stability in the chest and abdomen, regulating posture and assisting in breathing. The lumbar and sacral nerves manage the lower limbs and much of the pelvis, governing both voluntary movements like walking and involuntary actions such as bladder and bowel control. Through these connections, the spinal cord and its nerves ensure that every part of the body participates in the shared rhythm of existence, an unbroken flow of command and feedback that keeps us alive, balanced, and aware. It is easy to forget how much depends on these slender threads of tissue. Each one is a bridge between the outer and inner worlds, between perception and action. They allow us to feel the world's texture, the warmth of sunlight, the coolness of water, the softness of another's touch, and to respond with equal grace. Damage to even a single spinal nerve can cause loss of sensation, weakness, or pain in the region it serves, reminding us how finely tuned and interconnected the system truly is. Yet when intact, the spinal nerves perform their work flawlessly, their activity so natural and seamless that we rarely stop to notice it. In the deep quiet of the body, the spinal nerves continue their gentle traffic, carrying messages to and from the brain in a ceaseless exchange. They do not rest, for life itself depends on their constant motion. Every second, thousands of impulses pass through them, maintaining balance, coordinating organs, and preserving the delicate harmony that sustains the human form. In their silent labor, they reflect the deeper truth of the body, that even in stillness, there is movement. Even in rest, there is communication. Beneath the spine, within the unseen architecture of nerves, the music of the body continues to play soft, unending, and profoundly alive. 7. The neurons' quiet language. Every movement, every heartbeat, every sensation that ripples across the surface of the skin begins as a whisper within a single cell, the neuron. These cells are the true messengers of the nervous system, the quiet translators between the physical and the electrical, between the outer world and the inner self. Though microscopic, they form vast and intricate networks that allow the spinal cord and brain to communicate with every corner of the body. Through their patterns of firing, the body learns, reacts, and remembers. The neuron's language is not one of sound or sight, but of energy and chemistry, expressed through fleeting pulses that travel with astonishing precision. Each neuron is a tiny marvel of structure and purpose. It is shaped not like most other cells, which are round or uniform, but like a branching tree whose limbs reach outward in every direction. At its core lies the cell body, or soma, containing the nucleus and the machinery that sustains life. From it extend the dendrites, delicate filaments that receive incoming signals, and a single long projection called the axon, which carries the neuron's messages away. The dendrites act as listeners, gathering input from neighboring neurons or sensory receptors, while the axon serves as the speaker, sending information onward. This polarity, one end receiving, the other transmitting, allows neurons to form directional chains of communication, from sensation to response. The axon can be remarkably long. In some neurons, it stretches only a fraction of a millimeter. In others, such as those connecting the spinal cord to the muscles of the foot, it can extend more than a meter. Along its length, it is often insulated by a sheath of myelin, formed by specialized glial cells that wrap themselves around the axon like layers of silk. Myelin is not continuous but segmented, leaving tiny gaps called nodes of Ranvier where the axon's surface is exposed. When an electrical impulse travels along a myelinated axon, it does not flow smoothly like a current in a wire. Instead, it leaps from node to node, a process known as saltatory conduction. This leaping allows the signal to travel at speeds far greater than would otherwise be possible, a swift, graceful dance of electricity across microscopic distances. The impulse itself, known as the action potential, is a transient change in the electrical charge of the neuron's membrane. At rest, a neuron maintains a small voltage difference between its inside and outside, with the interior slightly negative relative to the exterior. This difference is maintained by pumps and channels that move charged particles, or ions, across the cell membrane. When a neuron is stimulated by touch, by light, by the firing of another neuron, specific channels open, allowing positively charged ions to rush in. This sudden influx reverses the membrane's polarity. Once the impulse passes, the original balance is restored, and the neuron returns to its resting state, ready to fire again. This electrical language, though invisible, the frequency and timing of the impulses convey meaning. Rapid bursts may signal urgency or intensity, while slower rhythms may represent calm or steady states. Unlike the binary signals of machines, however, the neuron's communication is fluid and adaptive, shaped by the chemistry that follows each electrical event. For at the end of every axon lies a synapse-a-minute gap between one neuron and the next, where electricity gives way to chemistry. When the action potential reaches the axon terminal, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters, small chemical messengers stored within vesicles. These molecules cross the synaptic cleft and bind to receptors on the surface of the next neuron, opening channels that continue the signal. Some neurotransmitters excite the next cell, urging it toward firing. Others inhibit it, creating pause and balance. Together, they form the music of the nervous system, a symphony of excitation and restraint that shapes every experience and response. The spinal cord contains millions of these neurons, organized into circuits that allow it to perform both simple and complex tasks. Some neurons carry sensory information from the yin-strach periphery to the central nervous system. Others transmit commands from the brain to the muscles, and still others, known as interneurons, serve as intermediaries, processing information within the spinal cord itself. Interneurons are particularly important in reflexes, where they connect sensory input directly to motor output, bypassing the brain entirely to create instantaneous reactions. Through these short loops, the spinal cord can act independently, ensuring that the body responds to danger before the conscious mind has time to interpret the threat. Yet, even in these reflexive actions, the neuron's language remains intricate and precise. A sensory neuron may fire in response to the stretch of a tendon, transmitting its signal to the spinal cord, where an interneuron evaluates the input and determines whether to activate a motor neuron. That motor neuron, in turn, sends its impulse outward to a muscle, causing contraction. The entire sequence takes less than a fraction of a second, but within that brief moment lies an extraordinary orchestration of electrical and chemical events, ions shifting, neurotransmitters diffusing, membranes polarizing and repolarizing in unison. The efficiency of this communication depends on the health of the neurons and their myelin. Damage to an axon or its sheath can slow or block transmission, leading to weakness, numbness, or paralysis. Diseases such as multiple sclerosis occur when the immune system attacks the myelin, disrupting the smooth flow of impulses. In contrast, when myelination is intact, the signals flow effortlessly, sustaining the body's continuous conversation with itself. Each neuron, though tiny, contributes to this larger network, adding its voice to the collective hum of the nervous system. The neurons of the spinal cord do not act alone. They are supported by glial cells, the caretakers of the nervous system, ions and neurotransmitters in the surrounding environment. Some glial cells form the myelin sheath, while others guide developing neurons to their proper connections. For every neuron, there are many more glial cells working quietly in the background, ensuring stability so that communication can proceed without interruption. Within this architecture, the spinal cord becomes a living tapestry of interwoven messages. Sensory neurons bring news of the external world, pressure, warmth, vibration, pain, while motor neurons translate thought into motion. Between them, interneurons modulate, filter, and integrate, ensuring that responses are appropriate and coordinated. These three types of neurons form the fundamental triad of the nervous system, a dynamic loop that keeps the organism in constant equilibrium. What makes the neuron's language so remarkable is its combination of speed, adaptability, and permanence. A single impulse lasts only milliseconds, yet repeated patterns of firing can lead to long-term changes in the strength of connections between neurons. This phenomenon, known as synaptic plasticity, allows the nervous system to learn and remember. Even within the spinal cord, certain reflexes can be refined through repetition, their efficiency improving with practice. It is through this subtle capacity for adaptation that the body becomes more skilled, more responsive, more attuned to its environment over time. If one were to listen to the spinal cord, if its activity could somehow be translated into sound, it would resemble a gentle, ceaseless murmur, rising and falling with the rhythms of the body. The neurons fire in patterns that reflect every action and emotion, the rush of a step, the tremor of surprise. Their collective activity is the music of life itself, continuous and intricate, yet effortless in its execution. As the body lies still, the neurons do not. They continue their dialogue in silence, exchanging electrical whispers that maintain the beating of the heart, the expansion of the lungs, and the tone of the muscles that hold the spine in place. Each neuron contributes its tiny voice to the harmony, ensuring that the great conversation of the nervous system never ceases. In this sense, the spinal cord is not only a structure of anatomy, but a living language, one spoken without words, carried in pulses of light and chemistry, sustaining the body through every moment of its existence. And as the night deepens, this language continues beneath awareness, a quiet symphony of connection that endures even in dreams. It is the language of the neurons, the hidden poetry of life, endlessly repeating its message through every fiber of the spinal cord, binding the mind and body together in perfect, eternal conversation. 8 pathways of communication. Within the quiet column of the spinal cord, life's most intricate messages travel ceaselessly, ascending and descending in carefully arranged pathways. These streams of electrical activity carry the essence of communication between the brain and the body, linking every cell, every muscle, and every sensation into one unified network. It is through these pathways that awareness flows outward and perception returns inward, maintaining the constant equilibrium that defines living existence. The spinal cord is not merely a structure of anatomy, but a vast communication system, a bundle of highways where impulses move in perfect coordination, weaving the physical world into the fabric of consciousness. Every signal that moves through the spinal cord follows a deliberate course. These pathways are organized into two great directions: ascending tracks that carry sensory information to the brain, and descending tracks that bring motor commands from the brain to the body. Between them, a third kind of route exists, connecting neurons within the spinal cord itself to form reflex arcs and local circuits. Together, these networks allow the body to act swiftly, think deliberately, and sense the world with subtle precision. Nothing in this system is wasted or random. Every fiber has its destination, and every signal its purpose. The ascending tracks form the sensory highways. They begin at the periphery, where specialized receptors embedded in the skin, muscles, and joints detect changes in the environment. Some receptors respond to pressure, others to temperature, and others still to vibration or stretch. When activated, they convert these physical events into electrical impulses that travel along sensory neurons into the spinal cord. Once inside, these impulses may enter one of several major pathways, each dedicated to a specific type of information. The dorsal column medial lemniscus pathway, for example, carries sensations of fine touch, vibration, and proprioception, the sense of the body's position in space. The spinothalamic tracts, by contrast, transmit pain and temperature. Still others, like the spinocerebellar tracts, convey information about movement and muscle coordination to the cerebellum, allowing balance and posture to be maintained without conscious thought. As these impulses rise toward the brain, they often cross from one side of the body to the other, a phenomenon known as decussation. This crossing ensures that the left side of the brain interprets sensations from the right side of the body, and vice versa. The result is a harmonious symmetry of control and perception, a mirror-like organization that defines the nervous system's structure. At each level, sensory neurons may synapse with interneurons that refine and filter the signals before passing them onward. By the time these impulses reach the brain's higher centers, they have already been sorted, adjusted, and interpreted for importance. Some will reach consciousness, the feel of fabric, the warmth of sunlight, the texture of the ground beneath your feet, while others remain in the background, unnoticed yet essential, quietly informing the brain about balance, pressure, and position. Descending tracks perform the opposite task. They carry messages from the brain to the spinal cord, translating intention into action. These pathways originate in various regions of the brain, most notably in the motor cortex, where voluntary movement begins. When you decide to reach for an object, neurons in the motor cortex fire, sending impulses down the corticospinal tracts. These tracts descend through the brainstem, where most of their fibers cross to the opposite side, ensuring that the right hemisphere of the brain controls the left side of the body. Once in the spinal cord, they synapse with motor neurons in the ventral horn, which then send signals outward through spinal nerves to the muscles. The result is a precise, coordinated motion, the transformation of thought into movement. Other descending pathways play more subtle roles. The reticulospinal tracts help regulate posture and muscle tone, keeping the body upright and balanced. The vestibulospinal tracts, originating from the inner ear's balance centers, adjust the muscles of the neck and trunk in response to changes in head position. The rubrospinal and tectospinal tracts contribute to reflexive adjustments of the limbs and eyes, allowing the body to react to sudden stimuli. These systems work together, often without conscious awareness, blending voluntary control with involuntary stability. In this way, even the simplest gesture involves the seamless cooperation of multiple pathways, each tuned to maintain harmony within motion. Between the ascending and descending tracks lie the local circuits of the spinal cord, smaller networks of neurons that handle immediate processing. These circuits are responsible for reflexes, those rapid, automatic responses that protect the body and preserve balance. When a reflex is triggered, sensory neurons send a signal into the spinal cord, where it is relayed directly to motor neurons through interneurons. The brain is informed of the event only after the response has already occurred. This arrangement allows the body to react faster than conscious thought would permit a design born of survival, refined through evolution. The beauty of these pathways lies in their organization. The white matter of the spinal cord, where these tracks run, ascending fibers occupy specific regions, such as the dorsal columns and lateral funiculi, while descending fibers follow their own defined courses in the anterior and lateral columns. This arrangement ensures that no signals interfere with one another and that every impulse reaches its destination without confusion. Even the number of fibers within each tract reflects its importance. Those that carry sensory input from the hands and face, where sensitivity is high, are densely packed, while those from less sensitive regions are fewer. It is through these pathways that the spinal cord sustains the continuous dialogue between the inner and outer worlds. When you touch something warm, the message travels instantly through ascending tracks to the brain, which interprets the sensation. If the temperature becomes too high, descending tracks carry the brain's response, instructing the muscles to withdraw the hand. These exchanges occur countless times each second, a choreography so fast and effortless that it creates the illusion of seamless awareness. Every impulse, no matter how fleeting, contributes to the body's unity. A single touch on the skin sets in motion a cascade of communication, sensory neurons relaying to the spinal cord. The ascending tracks tell the brain what has happened, and the descending tracks adjust posture, ensuring balance. In that instant, the entire nervous system acts as one, guided by the continuous conversation of the spinal pathways. The balance of these routes is delicate. When disease or injury disrupts them, the consequences are profound. Damage to ascending tracks can result in the loss of sensation, the inability to feel temperature, touch, or position, while damage to descending tracks can cause weakness or paralysis. Yet even in such cases, the spinal cord often finds ways to adapt. Some pathways reroute, neighboring neurons form new connections, and with time, partial function may return. This adaptability, known as neuroplasticity, beyond their mechanical function, the spinal pathways represent the physical expression of something deeply human, the bridge between perception and intention, between thought and the tangible world. When you move your hand, it is not merely muscle and bone that act, but the living electricity of the spinal cord translating desire into action. When you feel the cool air against your skin, it is not only a chemical reaction, but an entire network of neurons carrying that sensation through the ascending tracks to the mind, where it becomes experience. In the stillness of rest, these pathways do not sleep. They continue their subtle exchanges, regulating the body's position, adjusting muscle tone, and maintaining internal balance. Even as you drift into dreams, the spinal cord keeps its gentle communication alive. The diaphragm continues to contract, the heart beats in rhythm, and the body remains attuned to the world around it. Beneath the silence, the ascending and descending tracks hum softly with activity, a constant stream of signals flowing like a river beneath the surface of consciousness. The pathways of communication within the spinal cord are a masterpiece of design, a living network of order and adaptability. They link the brain's abstract will to the body's physical form, turning intention into movement and perception into knowledge. Harmony, its awareness, and its peace. The spinal cord, through these countless threads of transmission, holds the essence of connection, a continuous dialogue between the seen and unseen, between the self that moves and the self that feels. between the quiet depths of the body and the boundless expanse of the mind. 9. The reflex arc. Simplicity in motion. Deep within the quiet order of the spinal cord lies one of the body's most remarkable designs, the reflex arc. It is the simplest and yet one of the most vital forms of communication that exists within the nervous system. Through it, the body can react to danger, adjust to changes, and protect itself without the need for conscious thought. It is an automatic, instantaneous circuit, one that bypasses decision-making entirely in favor of pure survival. Though we may think of reflexes as small, simple actions, they represent a profound truth about the body's intelligence. That even without the brain's direction, the spinal cord can act with precision and purpose. To understand the reflex arc, one must imagine a pathway so direct and efficient that it performs its task in less than a heartbeat. This pathway begins with a receptor, a specialized nerve ending that detects a change in the environment. That change could be anything: a sudden touch, a sharp pain, a stretch in the muscle, or a shift in temperature. The receptor converts this physical stimulus into an electrical impulse, sending it along a sensory neuron toward the spinal cord. The signal enters through the dorsal root and travels into the gray matter, carrying with it the message of what has just occurred. Within the spinal cord, the impulse may travel through one or more interneurons, or sometimes directly to a motor neuron, which then sends a command outward through the ventral root. The motor neuron's signal reaches the muscle, causing it to contract or relax. The entire process, from stimulus to response, takes only a fraction of a second, often before the conscious mind is even aware that something has happened. This sequence receptor, sensory neuron, integration center, motor neuron, and effector forms the essence of the reflex arc. It is the nervous system's simplest circuit, yet it is among the most efficient. Because it bypasses the brain, it allows for immediate action when delay could mean harm. If your hand touches a hot surface, for instance, the sensory neurons in your skin send an urgent message to the spinal cord, which instantly activates the motor neurons that command your arm muscles to withdraw. The entire motion occurs before the sensation of pain even reaches the brain. Only after you have already pulled away does the message ascend through the sensory tracts to the brain, allowing you to realize what happened. This speed of reaction, born of simplicity, is what makes the reflex arc so vital to protection and survival. Not all reflexes are responses to external danger. Some are internal, maintaining the body's equilibrium from moment to moment. The stretch reflex, for example, prevents muscles from being overstretched. When a muscle is suddenly lengthened, sensory receptors within it, called muscle spindles, detect the change and trigger an immediate contraction. This reaction helps maintain posture and balance without conscious effort. It is the reason a person can stand upright without constantly thinking about every muscle that keeps them so. A similar reflex occurs in the tendons, where receptors prevent muscles from exerting too much force, protecting them from damage. These reflexes operate constantly, fine-tuning every motion the body makes, ensuring fluidity and safety in all activity. In some cases, reflex arcs involve only two neurons, a sensory and a motor neuron, forming what is called a monosynaptic reflex. The stretch reflex is one such example. It has only a single synapse, a direct link between input and output, making it the fastest reflex of all. Most reflexes, however, are polysynaptic, involving one or more interneurons between the sensory and motor neurons. These additional connections allow for more complex responses, where multiple muscles may act in coordination. The withdrawal reflex, for instance, not only pulls one limb away from danger, but also activates muscles in other parts of the body to maintain balance. This coordination happens through interneurons that link different segments of the spinal cord, ensuring that the entire body responds as a unified whole. The reflex arc demonstrates the spinal cord's ability to act independently of the brain, Yet it also shows how closely the two work together. While the spinal cord handles the immediate response, the brain receives the information afterward, interpreting it and, if necessary, modifying future behavior. This dual system allows for both speed and learning. The reflex itself is automatic, but the experience it generates becomes part of memory, shaping how the body and mind will react next time. If a child touches a flame, the reflex pulls the hand away, but the brain remembers the pain, ensuring that the hand will hesitate before touching fire again. The reflex arc also reveals the balance between voluntary and involuntary control in the human body. Much of what keeps us alive happens without conscious awareness. The beating of the heart, the constriction of pupils, the adjustment of blood pressure. Many of these functions are regulated by reflexes that occur in the spinal cord and brainstem. Even within the realm of skeletal muscles, where voluntary control dominates, reflexes play a silent supporting role. They maintain tone, prevent injury, and adjust force with every movement. When you catch a falling object, for example, reflexes in your fingers and forearm muscles automatically adjust grip strength, preventing the object from slipping. You may think you are consciously controlling this action, but in truth, it is the reflex system that makes it possible. There is an elegance in the simplicity of reflexes, a kind of hidden wisdom within the body. They demonstrate that intelligence is not confined to thought. The spinal cord's reflex centers show an instinctive understanding of motion and balance, one that operates far below the level of awareness, yet defines much of how life is sustained. Each reflex is a loop of communication, stimulus, response, adjustment, a conversation between body and environment that never truly stops. Even during rest, reflexes remain active, subtly maintaining posture, regulating internal organs, and preserving the equilibrium of countless physiological systems. Reflex pathways govern the heartbeat, digestion, and even the dilation of blood vessels. When you stand up quickly, for instance, reflexes adjust blood flow to prevent dizziness. When light shines in your eyes, reflexes narrow the pupils to protect the retina. Each of these reactions is instantaneous, automatic, and perfectly measured, showing how deeply reflexes are woven into every aspect of survival. If one were to visualize the reflex arc, it would appear as a delicate loop, a line that bends back upon itself, endlessly repeating. It begins at the periphery, travels inward to the spinal cord. The shape of this loop is symbolic of life's continuity, input and output, cause and effect. And though it is a closed circuit, it remains part of the greater network of the nervous system, constantly communicating with higher centers of the brain, which can enhance or suppress reflex activity as needed. This interplay allows for adaptability. A dancer's precise control, a surgeon's steady hand, an athlete's coordination, all depend on the brain's ability to fine-tune reflexes, merging automaticity with intention. In moments of stillness, the reflex arc continues its silent vigilance. Muscles retain their tone through constant low-level reflex activity, known as the stretch reflex, preventing the body from collapsing under its own weight. Tendons and joints send steady streams of information about position and movement, even in sleep. The spinal cord listens, adjusts, and maintains the gentle balance that allows the body to remain at peace. The reflex arc, in its quiet perfection, reminds us that the body's intelligence is vast and layered. Beneath thought lies instinct. Beneath intention lies automation. And beneath consciousness lies a web of reflexes that sustain and protect. It is the oldest and most enduring form of neural communication, simple, direct, and unerring. In its loops of motion and return, it mirrors the rhythm of breathing, the pulse of the heart, the cycles of rest and wakefulness. It is life responding to life, simplicity giving rise to survival. Even as you sleep, this ancient circuit remains awake, alert to the world, ready to act in an instant. It is the quiet guardian of the body, the first responder of the nervous system, forever listening. In its simplicity lies elegance, and in its motion, the unbroken continuity of existence, a loop of protection and grace that has carried living beings safely through the long story of time. 10. A journey through a reflex. Imagine, for a moment, the stillness before emotion, the quiet that exists just before the body reacts to something in the world. A cool breeze brushes your skin, or perhaps the edge of a sharp surface grazes your hand. In that instant, long before awareness has formed into words, your body begins its silent choreography. It is the reflex in motion, an elegant sequence that connects sensation, interpretation, and response into one continuous flow. The journey of a reflex is the story of the nervous system in its purest form, perception transformed into action, guided by precision, speed, and the wisdom of the spinal cord. Every fine reflex begins at the threshold between body and environment, where the senses dwell. In the skin, in the muscles, in the tendons and joints, lie specialized sensory receptors, silent guardians that stand watch over every physical boundary. These receptors vary in form and purpose. Some detect pressure or stretch, some vibration or temperature, and some, like nociceptors, are attuned to potential harm, alerting the body to pain. When one of these receptors is stimulated, it converts the physical event into an electrical impulse. A touch, a stretch, a sting, all are translated into a pattern of voltage, a message that the nervous system can understand. This is the first step of the reflex, the transformation of the external into the electrical. Once the impulse has been created, it travels along a sensory neuron, racing toward the spinal cord. These neurons are like messengers, their long axons acting as living wires that conduct information from the periphery toward the central nervous system. The signal moves swiftly, passing through the nerve fibers that gather in bundles. At this entry point lies a small swelling, the dorsal root ganglion, which houses the cell bodies of these sensory neurons. Here, the message pauses briefly, like a traveler reaching a crossroads, before continuing inward to the gray matter of the spinal cord. Within the spinal cord, the reflex begins to take shape. The signal arrives in the dorsal horn, where sensory information from across the body converges. Depending on the nature of the reflex, the impulse may follow one of two routes. In the simplest reflexes, such as the stretch reflex, the sensory neuron connects directly to a motor neuron, a single synapse bridging the gap between input and output. In more complex reflexes, interneurons serve as intermediaries, integrating the signal and distributing it across multiple motor neurons. These interneurons act as the spinal cord's quiet interpreters, weighing the incoming message and coordinating the appropriate response. When the impulse reaches a motor neuron, the second half of the journey begins. The motor neuron, located in the ventral horn of the spinal cord, sends its own signal outward through the ventral root. From there, it joins the spinal nerve and travels toward the muscle that will act. The process is both instantaneous and perfectly ordered. In the span of milliseconds, the signal that began as a sensation in the skin or muscle has become a command, coursing down the axon of the motor neuron to its destination. At the neuromuscular junction, the nerve's electrical impulse is converted once again, this time into a chemical signal. The motor neuron releases neurotransmitters that cross the tiny gap between nerve ending and muscle fiber, triggering the muscle to contract. What follows is movement automatic, precise, and often protective. The hand withdraws from the sharp edge. The leg steadies itself after a sudden slip. The eyes blink at the approach of an unexpected flash. The reflex completes its circuit. Within a fraction of a second, the body has perceived, decided, and acted without the need for conscious awareness. This is the miracle of the reflex arc, that the body can think for itself when time does not allow the mind to intervene. To trace the journey of a reflex, is to see the nervous system at its most efficient. It reveals how deeply the spinal cord is connected to every action of the body. The brain, though absent from the initial circuit, is not excluded entirely. As the reflex occurs, collateral branches of the sensory neuron send information upward through ascending tracts to the brain. There, the event is registered, analyzed, and remembered. You feel the sting of pain only after the hand has already withdrawn, but the sensation remains, teaching you to be cautious next time. This dual process, rapid action below consciousness, followed by slower awareness, shows the layered intelligence of the nervous system. Reflexes protect in the present. The brain learns for the future. Among all reflexes, the stretch reflex offers one of the clearest examples of this elegant design. It maintains the body's posture and muscle tone by responding instantly to stretch. When a muscle lengthens unexpectedly, sensory receptors within it, the muscle spindles, detect the change. They send a signal through sensory neurons to the spinal cord, which immediately activates motor neurons to contract that same muscle. The result is a gentle correction, a restoration of equilibrium. This reflex operates continuously, even when we are unaware of it. As you sit or stand, countless stretch reflexes are occurring within your muscles, adjusting tension and keeping you balanced without conscious effort. Other reflexes are more complex but follow the same essential journey. The withdrawal reflex, for instance, involves multiple muscles working together. When one limb pulls away from a painful stimulus, others adjust to preserve balance. If you step on something sharp, the leg that feels the pain lifts, while the other stiffens to support the body's weight. This coordination happens through interneurons in the spinal cord that communicate across both sides of the body, ensuring harmony between motion and stability. In each case, the reflex acts as a complete, self-contained mechanism, perfectly adapted to the needs of the moment. What is most extraordinary about the reflex journey is its consistency. From infancy to old age, these circuits perform the same essential tasks, unchanged, yet endlessly reliable. The newborn's grasp reflex, the adult's knee-jerk response, the blink that protects the eyes from dust, all are variations of the same principle. Each begins with a stimulus, travels along a predictable path, and results in motion that preserves the integrity of the organism. These reflexes are older than thought itself, inherited from the earliest creatures that required instant reaction to survive. They are the nervous system's memory of evolution, encoded in the very wiring of the spinal cord. If one could listen to the reflex arc, it would sound like a rhythm of balance, a soft, repeating pulse that mirrors the cycles of life itself. It is not an act of will, but of necessity, not thought, but instinct. And yet within this instinct lies intelligence. For reflexes are not rigid or mechanical. They can adapt, strengthen, or diminish, depending on the body's state. When we practice a movement, such as playing an instrument or balancing on one foot, the spinal reflexes refine their responses, becoming more efficient. This adaptability, known as plasticity, allows reflex circuits to evolve over time, learning from repetition and feedback. The spinal cord, though separate from consciousness, is always learning in its own way. Rhythm of breathing, the adjustments of muscle tone, the subtle contractions that keep the body aligned, all are guided by reflex arcs that never sleep. They are the guardians of the body's stillness, ensuring that even in repose, life continues in motion. Beneath the quiet of the skin, the neurons hum softly, passing messages in a language older than thought. The journey of a reflex is not only a story of speed, but of wisdom. It is the body's way of ensuring that protection requires no deliberation, that survival is written into every fiber. It begins with a spark at the edge of sensation and ends with movement that restores harmony. Between these 2 points lies the spinal cord, the silent mediator, the unseen thinker, the one who acts without asking. In this unending loop of perception and response, the body reveals its most ancient truth, that motion is life, and life is motion. Each reflex is a promise kept by the nervous system, a promise to guard, to balance, to adapt. And though you may not feel its presence, it is there always, beneath awareness, guiding the body through its quiet dialogue with the world. In every heartbeat, every breath, every small adjustment that keeps you steady, the reflex completes its journey, a perfect circuit, endlessly looping, endlessly alive. 11 somatic reflexes. Throughout the living body, countless automatic responses unfold every second. Some of them occur within the soft interiors of organs, maintaining blood pressure or digestion. These are the somatic reflexes, the quiet protectors of posture, movement, and safety. They are called somatic because they involve the soma, the body as a whole, the voluntary muscles that are attached to bone. Yet the actions themselves are not governed by choice. They belong to that layer of existence that lies between control and instinct, where the body moves, without waiting for thought. Somatic reflexes are among the most elegant and immediate expressions of the spinal cord's intelligence, allowing the body to defend itself, to stay upright, to adapt to the demands of gravity and motion, and to function in harmony with its surroundings. Though we often believe that every action begins with intention, the truth is that much of what we call coordination relies on reflex circuits that keep us balanced and secure. When the foot strikes an uneven surface, when the head tilts slightly out of alignment, or when the muscles stretch unexpectedly, the body responds before the mind even becomes aware of what has occurred. The spinal cord, through its network of sensory and motor neurons, conducts these corrections instantly, preserving equilibrium and preventing harm. It is an ancient, deeply ingrained system, one that operates as smoothly in sleep as in wakefulness, as instinctively in the infant as in the adult. Among the simplest and most familiar of the somatic reflexes is the stretch reflex, also known as the myotatic reflex. This reflex occurs whenever a muscle is stretched beyond its resting length. Embedded within nearly every skeletal muscle are small sensory receptors called muscle spindles, which monitor the muscle's degree of stretch. When a muscle lengthens suddenly, perhaps from a quick movement or an unexpected load, these spindles detect the change and send a rapid stream of impulses through sensory neurons to the spinal cord. There, within the gray matter, these sensory neurons make direct contact with motor neurons that command the same muscle to contract. The result is a near instantaneous tightening that resists further stretching. This mechanism prevents the muscle from overstretching and tearing, maintaining both its integrity and the stability of the joint it moves. A familiar example of the stretch reflex is the knee-jerk reaction, which doctors test with a gentle tap just below the kneecap. The tap briefly stretches the tendon of the quadriceps muscle, activating its spindles. In response, the muscle contracts sharply, producing a small kick of the lower leg. Though simple, this reflex demonstrates the spinal cord's ability to generate movement without the brain's involvement. It also reveals the circuit's precision. Only the stretched muscle contracts, while its opposing muscle, in this case, the hamstring, relaxes through a process called reciprocal inhibition. This coordination ensures smooth and efficient motion, preventing the muscles from working against one another. Another essential somatic reflex is the withdrawal reflex, which protects the body from harm. Unlike the monosynaptic stretch reflex, the withdrawal reflex is polysynaptic, involving several interneurons and multiple muscle groups. It begins when a painful or damaging stimulus activates nociceptors in the skin. The sensory signal travels to the spinal cord, where interneurons distribute it to different motor neurons that control the muscles responsible for pulling the affected limb away. If the hand touches a sharp object, for example, flexor muscles contract to withdraw it, while extensor muscles are inhibited to ensure the movement is smooth and rapid. The entire response unfolds in less than a second, often before the sensation of pain even reaches consciousness. What makes the withdrawal reflex particularly elegant is its ability to coordinate across the body. In many situations, removing one limb from danger requires others to act in balance. This coordination is achieved through the crossed extensor reflex, a companion to the withdrawal reflex. When one leg steps on something sharp, for instance, sensory signals trigger the withdrawal of that leg, but at the same moment, interneurons in the spinal cord activate the muscles of the opposite leg, causing it to extend and bear the body's weight. This dual action prevents loss of balance and ensures stability even during sudden movement. Such reflexes reveal that the spinal cord does not simply command individual muscles, it orchestrates entire patterns of motion, maintaining balance and orientation automatically. Beyond protection and posture, somatic reflexes contribute constantly to the fine-tuned harmony of motion. Walking, for example, relies on reflex circuits that adjust muscle activity in response to feedback from the limbs and joints. As one foot leaves the ground, receptors in the muscles and tendons send information about position and tension to the spinal cord, which modifies the activity of motor neurons to coordinate the next step. Even skilled voluntary movements, running, playing an instrument, dancing, are layered atop a foundation of reflex activity that maintains rhythm and precision. The brain initiates these actions, but the spinal cord ensures they remain fluid and balanced through continuous reflexive adjustment. In a sense, somatic reflexes embody the perfect partnership between structure and spontaneity. They operate predictably, yet they adapt to circumstance. The strength of a reflex can change depending on the body's needs, amplified during alertness or stress, subdued during relaxation or sleep. Higher brain centers can modulate these reflexes, enhancing or suppressing them as conditions demand. Athletes and musicians, through training and repetition, refine their reflexes, integrating them seamlessly into complex voluntary motions. This adaptability shows that reflexes are not static, mechanical responses, but dynamic expressions of the nervous system's capacity for learning and adjustment. Reflexes also hold immense value in medicine, where they serve as diagnostic windows into the health of the nervous system. Because reflex arcs are self-contained, they can reveal the integrity of specific spinal, cord segments, and peripheral nerves. A physician testing the knee-jerk reflex, for instance, is assessing the function of the second to fourth lumbar spinal segments. A diminished or exaggerated response can indicate damage or disease affecting either the sensory or motor components of the circuit. Similarly, the plantar reflex, in which the sole of the foot is stroked, can reveal the presence of neurological disorders depending on whether the toes curl normally or fan outward in an abnormal response known as the Babinski sign. In this way, the simplest reflexes become vital diagnostic tools, offering a glimpse into the silent workings of the spinal cord and its pathways. Somatic reflexes also play a quiet but crucial role in daily comfort and safety. They help maintain posture when the body tires, allowing muscles to shift tension automatically. They enable delicate adjustments in grip when holding an object, preventing it from slipping or breaking. They steady the eyes as the head moves, keeping vision clear and stable. Even the act of swallowing involves a complex pattern of reflex coordination between muscles of the mouth and throat. These responses are so seamlessly integrated into behavior that they appear effortless, yet they represent a constant ballet of reflex circuits working in perfect synchrony beneath awareness. At their core, somatic reflexes remind us that the nervous system is not solely a network of thought but also of instinct, a living intelligence that acts without hesitation. The body does not wait for reason when the skin is burned or the balance shifts. It moves first, thinks later. This immediacy is not a lack of thought, but a deeper form of wisdom, one that values preservation over deliberation. Within every reflex lies the history of survival, the inherited memory of countless generations adapting to the demands of movement and the hazards of the world. As the body rests, these reflexes do not sleep. The muscles maintain a gentle tone through the constant, rhythmic firing of motor neurons modulated by reflex arcs. The body remains ready to move, to adjust, to respond. It is through these ceaseless loops that the somatic system preserves its harmony. Beneath the calm surface of rest, the reflexes hum quietly, preparing for the next motion, the next need, the next instant of life. In their simplicity and precision, somatic reflexes reveal the grace of the human body, a harmony of action that requires no command, only connection. They are the embodiment of movement without thought, protection without fear, balance without effort. They are the proof that life, even in its quietest moments, is never still. The spinal cord, through its countless reflex circuits, continues its watch, ensuring that the body remains both active and safe. Each reflex is a promise, silently kept a promise that the body will always move to preserve itself, even before the mind knows why. 12. Autonomic reflexes. While somatic reflexes move the body through the outer world, their counterparts, the autonomic reflexes, govern the inner world, sustaining the silent processes that make life possible. They regulate the heartbeat, the rhythm of breathing, the contraction of the digestive tract, and the diameter of blood vessels. They are ceaseless, invisible, and involuntary, forming a vast and intricate network of control that ensures balance within the body, no matter what changes occur outside it. These reflexes belong to the autonomic nervous system, the portion of the nervous system that functions beyond conscious awareness, coordinating the organs, glands, and smooth muscles in a harmony so complete that we seldom notice its presence until something disturbs it. Unlike somatic reflexes, which involve skeletal muscles and immediate physical motion, autonomic reflexes operate quietly within the viscera, the heart, lungs, intestines, and glands. Their purpose is not movement but regulation. Through these reflex loops, the body maintains homeostasis, a steady internal environment that allows every cell to function at its optimum state. Each reflex acts like a small caretaker, constantly monitoring and adjusting variables such as temperature, pressure, and chemical composition. The sum of these reflexes creates the background rhythm of life: a heart that speeds up when we stand, a stomach that begins to churn at the scent of food, pupils that constrict in bright light, and sweat glands that cool the skin when the air grows warm. At the core of every autonomic reflex lies the same fundamental structure found in all reflex arcs: a receptor, a sensory neuron, an integration center, a motor neuron, and an effector. But the details are more layered. The receptors are often located deep within organs or blood vessels, detecting changes in pressure, stretch, or chemical concentration. The sensory information they gather travels through visceral afferent fibers into the spinal cord, or brain stem, where integration occurs not only in local circuits, but also within higher autonomic centers, such as the hypothalamus and medulla oblongata. From these centers, signals are sent outward through two motor neurons, a preganglionic and a postganglionic neuron, forming a two-step chain that connects the central nervous system to the target tissue. This arrangement, though more complex than the single motor neuron of somatic reflexes, allows for finer control and coordination across the body's internal systems. The autonomic nervous system is divided into two main branches, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. These branches are often described as opposites, one stimulating activity, the other promoting rest, but they are best understood as partners that maintain balance through cooperation and contrast. The sympathetic division prepares the body for action, orchestrating the responses associated with alertness and exertion. When it is activated, the heart beats faster, the lungs draw in more air, and blood is redirected toward the muscles and away from the digestive organs. This is the body's fight or flight state, evolved to meet moments of challenge or stress. The parasympathetic division, on the other hand, restores calm. It slows the heartbeat, stimulates digestion, and promotes energy conservation and healing. This is the rest and digest state, allowing the body to replenish itself after activity. Both systems operate through reflexes, responding automatically to sensory input and environmental cues, adjusting their activity second by second to keep the internal landscape in equilibrium. Consider, for instance, the baroreceptor reflex, one of the most important autonomic reflexes for maintaining stable blood pressure. Within the walls of certain arteries, notably the carotid sinus and the aortic arch, lie specialized stretch receptors called baroreceptors. These receptors constantly monitor the pressure of the blood as it flows through the vessels. When blood pressure rises, the increased stretch stimulates the baroreceptors, sending impulses to the cardiovascular centers of the medulla oblongata. There, the signals are interpreted, and the response is immediate. Parasympathetic activity increases, slowing the heart rate, causing the blood vessels to relax and dilate. The result is a gentle lowering of blood pressure to its normal range. When pressure falls too low, the opposite occurs. The sympathetic system becomes active, constricting the vessels and increasing heart rate to restore balance. This reflex functions continuously, adjusting with every beat of the heart, ensuring that the brain and organs receive a steady supply of blood no matter how the body moves or changes position. Another vital example is the pupillary light reflex, which protects the eyes and regulates the amount of light entering them. When light strikes the retina, sensory neurons send impulses through the optic nerve to the midbrain, where they are processed. In response, parasympathetic fibers stimulate the circular muscles of the iris to contract, causing the pupil to constrict. In dim light, sympathetic fibers take the lead, activating the radial muscles of the iris to widen the pupil, allowing more light to enter. This reflex not only protects the delicate tissues of the eye from excessive brightness, but also ensures clear vision across changing environments. Like all autonomic reflexes, it is beautifully balanced, blending sensory precision with immediate motor response. Autonomic reflexes also govern the smooth muscles of the digestive system, orchestrating a slow, rhythmic dance of contraction and relaxation that moves food through the stomach and intestines. The process, known as peristalsis, is regulated by the enteric nervous system, often called the second brain, a vast network of neurons embedded within the walls of the present gastrointestinal tract. Though it operates independently, it remains under the influence of sympathetic and parasympathetic control. When food enters the stomach, stretch receptors trigger a cascade of autonomic reflexes that increase glandular secretion, enhance motility, and coordinate the digestion process. As digestion proceeds, other reflexes signal satiety and reduce activity, preserving energy. This constant feedback loop sustains one of the body's most essential rhythms, converting nourishment into vitality. In the respiratory system, autonomic reflexes regulate the depth and frequency of breathing. Chemoreceptors in the carotid and aortic bodies monitor the levels of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the blood. When carbon dioxide levels rise, signaling the need for more oxygen, these receptors send impulses to the respiratory centers of the brainstem. The response is immediate. The diaphragm and intercostal muscles are stimulated to contract more forcefully, increasing the rate of respiration and restoring balance to the blood gases. This reflex ensures that oxygen delivery and carbon dioxide removal remain finely tuned, even during sleep or exertion. Autonomic reflexes also extend to the body's temperature control. When the internal temperature rises, thermoreceptors in the skin and hypothalamus activate reflexes that increase blood flow to the skin and stimulate sweat glands to release moisture, cooling the body through evaporation. When temperature falls, the opposite occurs. Blood vessels constrict, conserving heat, and skeletal muscles may shiver in reflexive bursts of activity that generate warmth. These reactions, though subtle, are essential to maintaining the narrow range of temperature in which life can thrive. Even emotional states are reflected in the patterns of autonomic reflexes. Fear quickens the heartbeat. Excitement brings a flush to the skin. Calmness slows the breath, and grief tightens the throat. Each of these reactions arises from the same intricate circuitry, the communication between sensory input, autonomic centers in the brain, and effectors throughout the body. The mind and the body are thus intertwined through reflexes that express emotion in physical form. These reflexes are so deeply ingrained that they persist through sleep, through dreaming, and even through unconsciousness. The heart continues to beat, the lungs continue to breathe, and the organs continue to work in quiet coordination. The autonomic nervous system never rests, and within its reflexes lies the continuity of life itself. To consider the autonomic reflex is to glimpse the serenity of the body's design. Each reflex is a small act of care, a response that protects, adjusts, or restores. They are the unseen rhythms that sustain existence, the background music of physiology. Even as you lie still, eyes closed, lost in rest, these reflexes move gently within you, keeping balance in your temperature, pressure, and breath. The spinal cord, the brain stem, and the networks of nerves that reach into every organ are all participants in this quiet symphony. And though they ask for no attention, they are the reason the body endures the night and wakes renewed. In the quiet spaces between heartbeats and breaths, the autonomic reflexes continue their eternal work, effortless, faithful, and exact. They are the silent custodians of equilibrium, the guardians of the body's inner peace. Through them, the body speaks to itself in signals of light and motion, adjusting each rhythm so that life may go on without interruption. They are the nervous system's deepest assurance that even in stillness, even in sleep, the pulse of balance continues unbroken, flowing softly through every organ and every cell, keeping the story of life alive. 13. The role of interneurons. Deep within the gray matter of the spinal cord, nestled among the sensory and motor neurons that carry messages to and from the body, lies a third and rays, often overlooked, class of nerve cells, the interneurons. They are smaller, quieter, and infinitely more numerous, forming the intricate webs that give the nervous system its depth and adaptability. Though they never reach beyond the spinal cord or brain, their influence extends into every action, every sensation, and every reflex that defines human movement and awareness. If the sensory neurons are the body's eyes and ears, and the motor neurons its hands and feet, then the interneurons are its mind, the integrators, the translators, the subtle decision makers that ensure the flow of information moves with purpose and precision. They sit at the crossroads between sensory input and motor output, receiving impulses from one side and sending refined signals to the other. When a sensory neuron carries a message into the spinal cord, passes through an interneuron or a network of them, these cells interpret the incoming information, adjust its intensity, combine it with signals from other sources, and then determine the appropriate response. In this way, interneurons give the spinal cord the ability to process and integrate, not just transmit. They transform the cord from a mere conduit of messages into a living, responsive center of coordination. The structure of an interneuron mirrors its role in this complexity. Unlike the long, cable-like axons of sensory and motor neurons, interneurons are typically short, with many branching dendrites that reach out to connect with neighboring cells. They form dense networks, capable of receiving input from dozens or even hundreds of other neurons at once. Each one acts like a node in a vast web, comparing and filtering signals before passing them onward. Some interneurons are excitatory, amplifying messages and encouraging activity in the motor pathways. Inhibitory, restraining impulses to prevent excessive reaction. It is this balance of excitation and inhibition that creates the smooth, coordinated movements of the body and prevents chaos within the nervous system. When a reflex is triggered, it is the interneurons that refine the response, ensuring that the right muscles contract while their opposites relax. In the knee-jerk reflex, for example, when the quadriceps muscle contracts to extend the leg, interneurons inhibit the motor neurons that control the opposing hamstring muscle. Without this inhibition, both muscles might contract at once, locking the joint in place. This principle of reciprocal inhibition, mediated by interneurons, is essential to all fluid movement. It ensures that motion is not only fast but efficient, that one part of the body yields while another exerts force. Even the simplest reflex owes its precision to the silent guidance of interneurons. Beyond reflexes, interneurons play a vital role in complex motor patterns. Walking, for example, depends on rhythmic alternation, one leg stepping forward while the other supports. This rhythm is generated by specialized networks of interneurons known as central pattern generators. These circuits can produce rhythmic output even without input from the brain, coordinating muscles in precise sequences that repeat automatically. The existence of such networks shows that the spinal cord possesses its own innate intelligence, capable of sustaining organized motion independently. When the brain sends the signal to walk, the spinal interneurons take over, maintaining the pattern until the command to stop arrives. Each stride, each adjustment to uneven ground, is the product of these deep, rhythmic patterns formed by countless interneurons working together in quiet synchrony. Interneurons also form the foundation of modulation within the spinal cord. They adjust the strength of signals that pass through, acting as gatekeepers of perception. This is especially apparent in the processing of pain. Not every painful stimulus that reaches the body is experienced with the same intensity. The spinal cord, through its interneuronal circuits, can amplify or diminish pain signals before they reach the brain. This phenomenon is part of what is known as the gate control theory of pain. When sensory neurons carrying pain impulses enter the spinal cord, they interact with interneurons that can either open or close the gate to the brain. Non-painful stimuli, such as touch or pressure, can activate inhibitory interneurons that dampen pain signals. This is why rubbing an injured area can lessen the discomfort. It stimulates pathways that suppress the pain at its spinal origin. The interneurons serve as mediators, blending sensations, regulating perception, and maintaining equilibrium between the body's signals. Their influence extends even further, shaping the body's responses through learning and adaptation. Though reflexes are, for B, often thought of as fixed, repetitive actions, interneurons allow them to evolve with experience. The connections between sensory and motor neurons can be strengthened or weakened based on repeated use, a phenomenon known as synaptic plasticity. Through this process, reflexes become more efficient or better suited to new circumstances. A pianist's fingers, for instance, move effortlessly through patterns of reflexive motion, trained by years of repetition. Behind this skill lies the gradual tuning of interneuronal circuits within the spinal cord, which adjust timing and coordination until the movement flows without conscious effort. In this way, interneurons link reflex and learning, bridging instinct and experience. The number of interneurons in the spinal cord is vast, far exceeding that of sensory or motor neurons. They form the dense core of the gray matter, especially in the dorsal and ventral horns, where sensory and motor information converge. Their diversity is equally remarkable. Some interneurons connect neighboring spinal segments, ensuring coordination along the body's length. Others link the two halves of the cord, creating symmetry between left and right sides. Some respond to chemical changes, others to mechanical or electrical inputs. Each type plays a distinct part, yet together they form a unified system, a dynamic network, constantly recalibrating the flow of information to suit the needs of the moment. Even the brain relies on spinal interneurons for efficiency. When voluntary commands descend through the corticospinal tracts, they do not always connect directly to motor neurons. Instead, They synapse on interneurons that distribute the signal among multiple motor pathways. This arrangement allows one command to influence many muscles simultaneously and permits adjustments based on sensory feedback. The brain issues the intention, but the spinal interneurons translate it into coordinated action. The elegance of this design lies in its flexibility. The brain does not need to micromanage every movement because the spinal cord, guided by interneurons, handles the details. When injury or disease affects the spinal cord, the role of interneurons becomes especially evident. In conditions where descending control from the brain is lost, as in spinal cord injury, reflexes often become exaggerated. Without the moderating influence of higher centers, the spinal interneurons continue their activity unchecked, amplifying responses. Conversely, if interneurons themselves are damaged, movements can become jerky or uncoordinated, and reflexes may weaken. These effects reveal the delicate balance that interneurons maintain. Too much activity leads to rigidity, too little to weakness. They are the quiet regulators, ensuring that every action remains smooth, measured, and in tune with the rest of the body. In the grand design of the nervous system, interneurons represent the harmony between complexity and simplicity. Each one performs a task so small it might seem insignificant, yet together they create patterns that underlie all movement and sensation. They transform the spinal cord from a bundle of wires into a thinking organ, one that can adapt, coordinate, and refine. Through them, the spinal cord becomes not just a messenger, but a mediator, a place where decisions, however small, are made in the service of balance and survival. Even in rest, when the body lies still, the interneurons remain active, adjusting tone, refining posture, and preparing for the next motion. They are the silent intelligence of the spinal cord, speaking in signals and pauses, creating the rhythm of life beneath consciousness. Their work is unending and unnoticed. Yet without it, the body would lose its grace, its balance, and its coherence. The interneurons, in their quiet labor, embody the essence of the nervous system's wisdom to act not through noise or effort, but through subtlety, connection, and the endless pursuit of harmony within motion. 14. The protective wisdom of reflexes. The reflexes of the human body are not merely mechanical reactions. They are the living embodiment of wisdom written into flesh. They are instinct's purest form, ancient as life itself, designed to preserve the organism long before thought or choice can intervene. Within their loops of motion lies a quiet intelligence, one that recognizes threat, disturbance, or imbalance, and answers instantly with precision and grace. The protective reflexes stand guard over the body, maintaining safety and stability without the need for awareness. They are the vigilant sentinels of the spinal cord, unceasing in their duty, watching over every movement and every breath. The protective reflexes exist at every level of the nervous system, from the spinal cord to the brainstem, and even within the smallest nerves that reach the surface of the skin. Their purpose is simple yet profound: to defend the integrity of the body and to ensure survival through automatic action. They form a network of rapid responses that shield us from danger, regulate internal systems, and maintain the delicate balance that life depends upon. Without them, the act of living would be perilous. Each moment would require thought and deliberation, where speed is essential. These reflexes bridge the gap between awareness and survival, moving the body before the mind has time to comprehend. Among the most visible of these reflexes is the withdrawal reflex, which acts as the first line of defense against harm. When a part of the body encounters something painful or damaging, a sharp edge, intense heat, or electrical shock, sensory receptors in the skin immediately transmit signals to the spinal cord. There, the information is processed in an instant, and motor neurons are activated to contract the appropriate muscles, pulling the body part away from danger. The entire process occurs in less than 1/10 of a second, far faster than conscious reaction could ever achieve. This reflex, though simple, has protected living creatures for millions of years. It is the nervous system's automatic guardian, ensuring that pain triggers movement before harm becomes injury. Another protective reflex, equally important but less visible, is the blink reflex. It is triggered by sudden stimuli near the eyes, a flash of light, a puff of air. Sensory neurons in the cornea and eyelids send impulses through the trigeminal nerve to the brainstem, where interneurons quickly activate the facial nerve, commanding the eyelid muscles to close. The eyes, delicate and exposed, are thus shielded in an instant. The blink reflex is so reliable that it continues even when consciousness fades. In deep sleep, the eyelids will still close reflexively if dust or touch disturbs them. This protective action is small, nearly imperceptible, but it speaks to the perfection of the body's automatic care even. The most fragile organs are never left defenseless. Within the airways, another reflex stands constant vigil. The cough. It is both forceful and elegant, clearing the lungs of irritants before they can cause harm. Receptors in the trachea and bronchi detect foreign particles or excess mucus, sending signals to the medulla oblongata, where the reflex is coordinated. The diaphragm contracts sharply, air pressure builds within the lungs, and the glottis opens in an explosive burst that expels the irritant. Though sometimes uncomfortable, the cough is among the body's most vital protective reflexes, safeguarding the delicate tissues of the respiratory system from invasion or obstruction. Closely related is the sneeze, which clears the nasal passages in a similar fashion, protecting the airways from particles and pathogens. Together, these reflexes maintain the purity of breath, the body's most essential rhythm. The protective wisdom of reflexes extends deep within, far beyond the surface or the visible. In the cardiovascular system, baroreceptor reflexes constantly adjust the heartbeat and blood vessel diameter to prevent pressure from dropping or rising too abruptly. When a person stands quickly, gravity pulls blood toward the lower limbs, and without intervention, the sudden drop in pressure could cause dizziness or fainting. The baroreceptors sense the change at once and trigger an increase in heart rate and vascular tone, restoring circulation to the brain before the mind even notices a shift. This silent correction occurs hundreds of times each day, invisible yet indispensable, maintaining stability in the face of constant movement. In the digestive system, reflexes guard the body against harm from within. When something touches the back of the throat, the gag reflex engages, preventing swallowing and the potential entry of harmful substances into the airway. This reflex, though often uncomfortable, has saved countless lives. Ingestion remains safely separated. Similarly, the swallowing reflex, once initiated, proceeds automatically through a sequence of muscular contractions that protect the airway while guiding food to the esophagus. Each step is carefully timed, controlled by circuits in the brainstem and spinal cord that operate faster and more reliably than conscious thought could ever manage. Even the pupils of the eyes are guided by protective reflexes. When light becomes too intense, the pupils constrict, shielding the retina from damage. In darkness, they widen, allowing vision to adapt to the faintest glow. These reflexive adjustments occur through a delicate balance of sympathetic and parasympathetic control, their rhythm continuous and precise. Through them, the eyes remain attuned to the world, safe within their chamber of light and shadow. The power of these reflexes lies not only in their speed but in their wisdom. They are not random reactions but carefully coordinated responses shaped by evolution to preserve life. Every reflex is a story written across time, a record of adaptation and necessity. The startle reflex, for example, which causes the body to flinch at sudden noise or movement, is one of the oldest protective patterns in the animal kingdom. It prepares the body for defense or escape before the mind can even interpret the sound. In that instant of contraction, the tightening of muscles, the quickening of breath, lies the memory of survival stretching back through countless generations. Reflexes also protect the body from itself. The Golgi tendon reflex, for instance, prevents muscles from generating excessive force that could damage tendons or bones. When tension becomes too great, sensory receptors within the tendons send inhibitory signals through interneurons to the motor neurons, controlling the muscle, causing it to relax. It is a quiet act of self-restraint, built into the system to ensure safety through balance. This reflex, working in tandem with the stretch reflex, maintains the delicate equilibrium between strength and control that defines graceful movement. What is remarkable about all protective reflexes is how seamlessly they integrate with consciousness. They are not separate from thought, but rather exist alongside it, complementing and supporting it. The brain can modify reflexes, enhance them, or suppress them, depending on need. A trained athlete, for instance, refines reflexes through repetition until they become extensions of intention. A surgeon's hand withdraws not from fear, but with precision, guided by reflexes disciplined through practice. The spinal cord and brain learn together, shaping reflexes into tools that serve both instinct and purpose. Even as we sleep, these reflexes continue their quiet duty. The heartbeat adjusts to the rhythm of dreams. The breathing reflex deepens and slows, preserving balance between oxygen and rest. If the air becomes stale or the body shifts in discomfort, reflexes stir the muscles, turning the body gently to a new position. They are the caretakers of stillness, ensuring that even in unconsciousness, life remains steady and secure. To think of reflexes as wisdom is to recognize that intelligence is not confined to thought. The spinal cord, the nerves, and the brainstem all participate in a vast and ancient knowing one that measures every moment of existence and responds with perfect timing. Reflexes embody this knowing. They are the gestures of the body's memory, acts of care encoded in its very structure. They speak the language of protection, of adaptation, of life preserving itself in motion. In the calm silence of rest, these reflexes remain vigilant, sensing every heartbeat, every breath, every faint vibration of the world. They do not tire, nor do they forget. They are the guardians of the body's continuity, the automatic wisdom that bridges instinct and awareness. Through them, the body survives not by chance but by design in an unbroken chain of protection, stretching from the first spark of life to this very breath. In every reflex lies the same promise, that the body will always act to preserve itself, swiftly and silently, guided by the timeless intelligence of its own making. 15 sensory pathways of the spinal cord. Every moment of life is shaped by sensation, the warmth of air across the skin, the texture of fabric against the fingertips, the gentle pull of gravity through the body. These experiences arise from signals that travel along the sensory pathways of the spinal cord, a vast network of communication that connects the body's outer world to the mind's inner awareness. Without these pathways, the body would move in silence, unable to feel its own form or perceive the environment it inhabits. The sensory tracts of the spinal cord transform the physical world into perception, carrying countless messages upward through the white matter, each one a thread in the intricate fabric of consciousness. At the most basic level, every sensation begins with a receptor, a specialized nerve ending attuned to a particular kind of stimulus. Some receptors respond to touch, others to temperature, vibration, stretch, or pain. When they are activated, they convert the energy of the stimulus into electrical impulses that travel along sensory neurons toward the spinal cord. Each receptor type is precisely matched to the information it transmits. The body contains mechanoreceptors that detect pressure and movement, thermoreceptors that sense heat and cold, nociceptors that respond to potential injury, and proprioceptors that monitor position and muscle tension. These receptors form the body's sensory web, translating the environment into a steady stream of signals that flow inward toward the spinal cord. Upon reaching the spinal cord, The sensory fibers enter through the dorsal roots, where they are sorted according to the type of information they carry. Some fibers ascend immediately to higher centers, while others synapse with interneurons that relay messages to other regions of the cord. The sensory tracts that carry these signals upward are arranged with elegant order, each one dedicated to a specific kind of sensation, and each following a well-defined path toward the brain. This organization ensures that the nervous system maintains clarity and precision, that every touch, every vibration, and every change in position reaches the correct part of the brain for interpretation. One of the most important sensory pathways is the dorsal column medial lemniscus system. This pathway carries sensations of fine touch, vibration, and proprioception, the sense of where the body is in space. Its fibers travel upward in the dorsal columns of the spinal cord, which lie along the posterior aspect of the white matter. Within these columns are two distinct tracts: the gracile fasciculus, which carries information from the lower half of the body, and the reticular cuneate fasciculus, which carries information from the upper body and arms. The arrangement is precise and symmetrical, ensuring that sensations from each region remain distinct. As the fibers ascend, they remain on the same side of the spinal cord, traveling all the way to the medulla oblongata, where they synapse with neurons in the gracile and cuneate nuclei. From there, the signals cross to the opposite side of the brainstem and continue upward through a pathway called the medial lemniscus, eventually reaching the thalamus, the great relay station of the brain. The thalamus then directs the information to the somatosensory cortex, where it becomes conscious experience, the awareness of a gentle touch or the position of a limb. In contrast to the dorsal column system, which carries refined sensations, the spinothalamic tracts convey the more immediate and protective senses of pain, temperature, and crude touch. These tracts lie within the anterolateral region of the spinal cord, where sensory fibers enter, synapse almost immediately with interneurons, and then cross to the opposite side within a few spinal segments. From there, they ascend toward the thalamus and ultimately to the cerebral cortex. The crossing of fibers ensures that each side of the brain perceives sensations from the opposite side of the body, a fundamental principle of nervous system organization. The spinothalamic tracts are vital to survival, allowing the body to detect harm and respond with speed. Pain and temperature signals reach consciousness almost instantly, guiding reflexes and voluntary action before danger can escalate. Between these two major systems lies another network, the spinocerebellar tracts, which carry information about muscle activity and joint position to the cerebellum. These pathways do not produce conscious sensation. Rather, they allow the body to coordinate movement and balance automatically. The cerebellum uses this information to fine-tune muscle activity, ensuring that motion is smooth and precise. When you walk, for example, these tracts send constant updates about the position and tension of your limbs, allowing subtle corrections to occur without thought. It is through this quiet feedback that the body maintains grace and control, turning intention into motion with seamless continuity. The beauty of the sensory pathways lies not only in their structure but in their constant, effortless activity. At every moment, millions of impulses travel upward through the spinal cord, conveying the condition of the body and the world around it. Most of these signals never reach awareness. They are processed and filtered within the spinal cord, brainstem, or cerebellum, allowing only the most significant sensations to rise into consciousness. This filtering protects the mind from being overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information it receives. It is the spinal cord's silent discernment, a form of wisdom that decides what must be felt and what can remain unnoticed. Even within this hierarchy of sensation, balance and harmony prevail. Pain and touch, for instance, interact through shared pathways and interneuronal circuits that can modulate perception. A gentle rub near an injury can reduce the feeling of pain, a phenomenon explained by the interplay of signals within the dorsal horn. Non-painful stimuli activate inhibitory interneurons that suppress the transmission of pain signals, closing what is sometimes called the gate of perception. This intricate relationship between pathways shows that the spinal cord does not simply relay messages, but interprets them, blending signals in ways that preserve comfort and control. The sensory pathways also demonstrate the remarkable symmetry of the nervous system. Each tract is mirrored on both sides of the spinal cord, carrying information from corresponding parts of the body. This bilateral organization ensures that perception is balanced and coherent. Left and right halves of the body communicate continuously through commissural fibers that cross the midline. Whether walking, grasping, or turning the head toward a sound, the coordination of movement depends on the even exchange of sensory information across these mirrored pathways. When injury disrupts the sensory tracts, the effects are both specific and revealing. Damage to the dorsal columns can cause the loss of fine touch and proprioception below the level of the lesion, leaving the person unable to sense position or vibration. Damage to the spinothalamic tracts, on the other hand, results in the loss of pain and temperature sensation on the opposite side of the body. These precise patterns of deficit allow physicians to locate the site of injury within the spinal cord, a testament to the order and predictability of the sensory pathways. Yet even when damaged, the nervous system retains a measure of resilience. Through neuroplasticity, neighboring neurons can sometimes adapt, forming new connections that partially restore function. It is easy to take sensation for granted to feel without considering the vast journey each signal must make to reach awareness. A single touch on the skin triggers a cascade of events. Receptors activate, neurons fire, signals ascend through the spinal cord and brainstem, cross hemispheres, reach the thalamus, and finally arrive at the cortex, where the touch becomes an experience. This entire process occurs in milliseconds, linking the outer world to the inner self in perfect synchrony. It is through this system that we come to know our place in space, the texture of our surroundings, and the quiet presence of our own body. Even in rest, the sensory pathways remain awake, their messages continuing though consciousness drifts into sleep. They monitor the heartbeat, the position of the limbs, the softness of the surface beneath. They are the body's unending connection to the world, maintaining orientation and awareness even in dreams. Through them, the body remains anchored to the present moment, guided by the constant flow of sensation rising through the spinal cord. The sensory pathways of the spinal cord reveal the poetry of the nervous system, a continuous dialogue between body and mind, between the physical and the perceptual. Every touch, every breath, every whisper of movement is a message carried upward through these silent roads, shaped into meaning by the brain, and returned again as awareness. They remind us that to feel is to live, to exist in both space and time, connected to the world through the endless communication that begins in the quiet depths of the spinal cord. 16 motor pathways of the spinal cord. If the sensory tracts of the spinal cord bring the world inward, carrying the impressions of touch, temperature, and position toward awareness, then the motor pathways send the world outward again, translating thought into motion, intention into action. Through them, every movement from the simplest reflex to the most delicate gesture begins as an electrical impulse in the brain, travels downward through the spinal cord, and emerges as contraction and motion in the muscles. The motor pathways represent the dialogue between mind and body made visible, a ceaseless flow of energy that animates every limb, every breath, every subtle act of expression. The story of movement begins high in the brain. Within the motor cortex, a strip of tissue along the frontal lobe that holds the plans for every voluntary motion. Here, billions of neurons map the body in a perfect miniature, a mirror of the self known as the motor homunculus. Each region of this map corresponds to a specific part of the body, with larger areas devoted to those muscles requiring finer control. When a thought forms a desire to reach, to speak, to walk, neurons within the motor cortex fire in coordinated patterns, sending their signals into the descending tracts that pass through the brainstem and into the spinal cord. These tracts, organized with extraordinary precision, carry the electrical imprint of intention toward the muscles that will execute it. The most important of these pathways is the corticospinal tract, the principal route of voluntary movement. It begins in the primary motor cortex and passes downward through the internal capsule, a narrow corridor of white matter that funnels countless fibers between deeper structures of the brain. From there, the fibers continue into the brainstem, forming the pyramids of the medulla oblongata, two parallel ridges visible on its surface. At this point, something remarkable occurs. Nearly 90% of the fibers cross over to the opposite side in an event known as decussation. This crossing ensures that the left hemisphere of the brain controls the right side of the body and the right hemisphere controls the left. After crossing, the fibers descend into the lateral corticospinal tract of the spinal cord, continuing their journey until they reach the appropriate segment. There, they synapse with motor neurons in the ventral horn, which send their axons out through the ventral roots to the muscles. The smaller group of fibers that do not cross in the medulla descend as the anterior corticospinal tract, many of which cross later within the spinal cord itself. Together, these tracts form the primary link between conscious intention and muscular motion. The corticospinal tract governs the most precise and deliberate movements, the skilled motions of the hands and fingers, the coordination of speech, the balance of posture during walking, every subtle gesture, every delicate control of pressure or direction depends on its flawless function. When these fibers are disrupted, voluntary movement becomes clumsy or weak, and reflexes may grow exaggerated as the brain's moderating influence is lost. Yet even then, the spinal cord retains its reflexive capacity, continuing to act through its own circuits of motion, reminding us that movement exists at many layers of the nervous system, from conscious control to automatic preservation. Beyond the corticospinal tract, several other descending pathways collaborate to refine and regulate movement. The rubrospinal tract, originating in the red nucleus of the midbrain, contributes to the control of limb flexor muscles and assists in coordination, especially when the corticospinal pathway is impaired. The reticulospinal tracts, emerging from the reticular formation of the brainstem, provide the foundation of posture and locomotion, influencing both flexor and extensor muscles. The vestibulospinal tracts, beginning in the vestibular nuclei, carry information from the inner ear's balance organs to the spinal cord, allowing the body to adjust automatically to shifts in position. When the head tilts or the body sways, these reflexive tracts activate muscles that restore equilibrium, keeping the body upright without conscious thought. The tectospinal tract, which originates in the superior colliculus of the midbrain, coordinates movements of the head and eyes in response to visual stimuli. Together, these descending systems weave an intricate network of control, blending voluntary and involuntary motion into the seamless grace of everyday movement. Within the spinal cord, the organization of the motor pathways mirrors the order of the body they serve. The neurons that control the arms lie higher than those for the legs, and the medial neurons control muscles closer to the body's center, while lateral neurons govern the limbs. This somatotopic arrangement ensures that every movement remains coordinated, with signals distributed precisely according to need. When a command descends from the brain, the appropriate spinal segments are activated in a pattern that reflects the desired motion. For walking, the signal does not move in isolation, but flows rhythmically between segments, activating flexors and extensors in sequence. This coordination relies on networks of interneurons within the spinal cord known as central pattern generators, which can produce rhythmic, repetitive motions even without continuous input from the brain. These circuits sustain the automatic rhythm of locomotion, breathing, and other patterned activities, a reminder that much of what we call movement is guided not by conscious control, but by deeply rooted neural design. Every motor action, is a conversation between descending command and sensory feedback. As the corticospinal tract carries orders downward, sensory pathways simultaneously send information upward, reporting the success or resistance of each movement. The spinal cord integrates these streams, adjusting output in real time through interneuronal networks. When lifting an object, for example, sensory receptors in the muscles and tendons report tension and load, allowing the spinal cord to modulate motor neuron activity to prevent strain. This loop of communication, descending command, balanced by ascending feedback, ensures that every movement remains precise, fluid, and safe. It is a quiet partnership, one that continues even during rest, as postural muscles subtly adjust under the spinal cord's steady guidance. The motor pathways are not rigid highways, but adaptable systems capable of remarkable change. When injury disrupts part of the pathway, other routes may strengthen or reconfigure to compensate. This neuroplasticity allows partial recovery of movement even after damage to the spinal cord or motor cortex. Physical rehabilitation takes advantage of this adaptability, encouraging surviving neurons to form new connections and pathways. Though the process is gradual and incomplete, it reflects the nervous system's inherent resilience, its desire to move, to reconnect, to restore harmony between will and action. The act of motion itself, though it seems effortless, is a miracle of timing and coordination. When you reach to grasp a cup, signals from the brain descend through the corticospinal tracts, activating motor neurons that contract the shoulder, arm, and hand muscles in perfect sequence. Simultaneously, inhibitory interneurons suppress opposing muscles, allowing smooth extension. The descending tracts also recruit reflex pathways that stabilize posture, ensuring that as one arm moves, the body remains balanced. In less than a second, a chain of communication has linked thought to motion, integrating dozens of muscles and millions of neurons into a single, fluid gesture. The spinal cord's role in this process is both humble and profound. It translates the abstract will of the brain into tangible motion, modulating speed, strength, and precision. The descending tracts serve as its language, a continuous stream of impulses that instruct, correct, and refine. When functioning in harmony, the system allows motion to unfold as naturally as breathing, without effort or strain. Even when the body rests, the motor pathways do not fall silent. They maintain a low level of tone in the muscles, keeping them ready to respond at any moment. This background activity, controlled by descending input from the brainstem and spinal cord, preserves posture and stability. It is a quiet readiness, the potential for motion, held within stillness. During sleep, when voluntary control is suspended, the motor pathways remain alive beneath the surface, ensuring that vital reflexes continue, that breathing persists, that the heart keeps its rhythm. To contemplate the motor pathways of the spinal cord is to see how movement arises not from muscle alone, but from an intricate communion between structure and intention. Every step, every gesture, every simple act of life depends on this silent partnership between the descending tracts and the networks within the cord. They are the messengers of will, the carriers of grace, the unseen threads that connect thought to the physical world. Within their steady flow lies the essence of living motion, a balance between control and surrender. Through them, the body speaks the language of the mind, transforming electrical impulse into physical form. In their continuous hum of activity, even as the body rests, the spinal cord remains awake, holding the memory of every movement it has ever made, ready to shape the next with the same quiet precision and timeless rhythm. 17. The spinal cord and posture beneath the seemingly effortless grace of standing, walking, or even sitting quietly, an invisible symphony unfolds within the spinal cord. Every moment of balance, every subtle shift of weight or tilt of the head depends on a delicate web of neural control. The spinal cord acts as the central axis of this balance, the mediator between gravity's pull and the body's upward defiance. Through its complex coordination of reflexes, sensory input, and motor output, it allows the human form to remain upright and fluid, to resist collapse, and to move with poise. Posture, that quiet, continuous miracle of equilibrium, is not maintained by muscle alone, but by the living intelligence of the spinal cord, forever listening to the world through sensation and forever whispering back through motion. The act of standing is far more dynamic than it appears. To the casual eye, a person at rest seems motionless, yet within that stillness, countless adjustments occur every second. Muscles contract and relax in minute patterns, joints shift imperceptibly, and sensory receptors send a constant stream of information upward through the spinal cord. These adjustments are controlled by reflexes and pathways that keep the body's center of gravity precisely aligned over its base of support. Even the smallest imbalance triggers a cascade of neural responses designed to restore stability. The spinal cord acts as both the sentinel and the architect of this balance, interpreting sensory input and shaping the subtle contractions that sustain posture. At the heart of postural control lies proprioception, the body's ability to sense its own position in space. Specialized receptors within muscles, tendons, and joints continually report on stretch, tension, and movement. The muscle spindles, embedded within muscle fibers, detect changes in length, while the Golgi tendon organs monitor force. These sensory messages travel rapidly through afferent neurons to the spinal cord, where they are processed and integrated. The information does not always need to reach consciousness. In most cases, the spinal cord responds automatically, adjusting the tone of muscles to correct any deviation. It is a perfect example of the body's unconscious intelligence, the wisdom of the spinal cord maintaining balance without the burden of thought. This process depends heavily on reflex activity, particularly the stretch reflex. When a muscle begins to lengthen unexpectedly, as when the body sways or tilts, the muscle spindles send immediate signals to the spinal cord, which responds by contracting the stretched muscle and relaxing its antagonist. This automatic reaction resists the sway and brings the body back to equilibrium. The mechanism is so finely tuned that these adjustments occur continuously, often in patterns too small to see. They are the tremors of stability, the living pulse of posture maintained by the spinal cord's reflexive control. But posture is not the product of the spinal cord alone. The brainstem and cerebellum contribute higher-level coordination, sending descending commands through pathways such as the vestibulospinal and reticulospinal tracts. These tracts integrate information from the inner ear, which senses head position and movement, and from the eyes, which provide visual cues about orientation in space. The spinal cord serves as the conduit through which this information translates into action. When the head tilts or the body leans, the vestibular system detects the change and sends signals downward through the vestibulospinal tracts, activating muscles that realign the head and spine. The reticulospinal tracts, meanwhile, provide background tone and posture adjustments that anticipate motion, allowing movement to flow smoothly from one position to the next. The spinal cord receives these instructions and executes them with perfect timing, coordinating dozens of muscles in an instant. Even during complex motion, posture remains under the spinal cord's care. When walking, for instance, the body's center of gravity constantly shifts with each step. The spinal cord manages these transitions through the rhythmic activity of central pattern generators, networks of interneurons that produce alternating flexion and extension in the legs. These networks ensure that one limb supports the body while the other advances, maintaining balance even as motion continues. At the same time, sensory feedback from the feet, legs, and trunk travels upward, allowing the spinal cord to fine-tune every step. This interplay between descending command and ascending feedback creates the effortless rhythm of gait, a harmony between movement and stability that the spinal cord conducts with quiet precision. The posture of the human form is unique among living creatures. Standing upright demands constant vigilance from the spinal cord, as gravity seeks to draw the body forward and downward. The vertebral column acts as the central pillar, curving gently to distribute weight and absorb shock. Along its length, deep postural muscles, the multifidus, erector spinae, and others remain partially active at all times, holding the spine in alignment. Their tone is not the result of deliberate contraction, but of continuous, low-level reflex activity governed by the spinal cord. This constant readiness, known as postural tone, is the foundation of balance. It allows the body to resist gravity with minimal effort, maintaining poise through perpetual micro-adjustment. Yet when injury or illness affects the spinal cord, damage to descending pathways, such as the corticospinal or reticulospinal tracts, can disrupt muscle tone, leading to either weakness or rigidity. Lesions affecting sensory input can impair proprioception, leaving the body without awareness of its position, resulting in unsteady movement. Even subtle dysfunctions can reveal the spinal cord's central role in posture. Conditions such as spasticity or exaggerated reflexes arise when inhibitory control from higher centers is lost, causing the spinal circuits to act alone, unmodulated. Quiet equilibrium replaced by unrestrained activity. These disturbances, though varied, all point back to the spinal cord as the foundation of postural control, the silent keeper of balance that sustains every act of movement and rest. Posture is not purely mechanical. It is also emotional and expressive. The nervous system reflects states of mind through the arrangement of the body. Fear bends the spine inward, confidence lifts it tall, fatigue lets it sag. These changes are mediated through autonomic and somatic pathways that converge within the spinal cord. A thought or emotion within the brain triggers descending signals that alter muscle tone and breathing, subtly reshaping the body's form. This dialogue between emotion and posture demonstrates how deeply connected the spinal cord is to both physical and psychological life. Every gesture of the body carries within it the imprint of the nervous system's state, the spinal cord translating inner feeling into outward form. The maintenance of posture also extends into stillness. When lying down, the spinal cord continues to monitor muscle tone, adjusting it to ensure comfort and circulation. Even in sleep, it remains active, responding to shifts in pressure or position, prompting small movements that prevent stiffness or discomfort. The dreamer may be unaware, but the spinal cord is always awake, its reflexes and networks continuing their silent work of preservation. In this way, the spinal cord serves not only as a bridge between body and motion, but between motion and rest, a continuous thread of awareness that endures even through unconsciousness. The beauty of postural control lies in its invisibility. The spinal cord is the conductor of this art, orchestrating an unending conversation between gravity and grace. Expression of its balance. Through posture, the spinal cord reveals its true character, not as a passive channel for signals, but as an active guardian of poise and stability. In the quiet act of standing, the spinal cord holds centuries of evolution and moments of thought. It carries the memory of crawling, climbing, walking, and reaching. It holds the structure of the human form upright against the world's downward force. Its reflexes and tracks are the threads that bind the self to motion, allowing the mind to rise while the body remains grounded. The spinal cord's guidance of posture is, in essence, its finest expression, a living equilibrium between motion and stillness, awareness and rest. It is the quiet mastery that allows the human form not only to exist, but to stand with grace against the endless pull of the earth. 18. The spinal cord and movement coordination. The human body moves with a grace that belies its complexity. The slow turning of the head involves an orchestra of muscles contracting and relaxing in perfect sequence, guided by an intricate flow of information. At the center of this harmony stands the spinal cord, the quiet conductor that coordinates motion, timing, and balance with flawless precision. It is through the spinal cord that the brain's ideas of movement are translated into physical reality. Every motion, from the smallest twitch to the grandest gesture, depends on the spinal cord's ability to synchronize commands and responses, linking the brain's intent to the muscle's obedient strength. Movement coordination is not a single act but a continuous process, unfolding moment by moment. It involves communication between descending signals from the brain, ascending feedback from the body, and reflex circuits within the spinal cord itself. Together, these systems form a dynamic loop, a self-correcting cycle that adjusts every movement as it happens. Without this constant dialogue, motion would be clumsy and unstable, but with it, the body moves with elegance, maintaining precision even in the face of change. The foundation of coordination begins with planning in the brain. Within the motor cortex, neurons organize the sequence of muscle contractions required for a desired action. This blueprint of motion travels downward through descending tracks, such as the corticospinal and reticulospinal pathways, carrying signals that will activate motor neurons in the spinal cord. Yet even the most carefully designed command from the brain cannot predict every variable: the shifting of weight, the texture beneath the feet, the subtle resistance of a muscle. It is here that the spinal cord takes over, transforming the brain's general instructions into adaptable, real-time movement. In the spinal cord's gray matter, interneurons form the networks that make this adaptation possible. They integrate input from the sensory receptors that monitor position, tension, and stretch, adjusting motor output with exquisite speed. When a muscle contracts too strongly, sensory signals from the Golgi tendon organs inhibit its motor neurons to prevent injury. When a muscle lengthens too far, the stretch reflex restores its tone. These reflexive adjustments occur in fractions of a second, often without reaching consciousness. The spinal cord becomes an independent center of control, capable of shaping motion without constant supervision from the brain. Among its most remarkable abilities is the generation of rhythmic movement through what are known as central pattern generators. These networks of interneurons can produce repetitive, alternating activity such as the pattern of walking or swimming, without requiring continuous input from higher centers. Once activated, they maintain a rhythm of flexion and extension, coordinating the movement of limbs in a steady cycle. In humans, these patterns allow walking to occur almost automatically, freeing the brain to focus on direction and purpose rather than the mechanics of each step. The spinal cord manages the timing, ensuring that as one leg extends, the other flexes, maintaining balance and momentum. This automatic rhythm, combined with sensory feedback from the feet and joints. The cerebellum and basal ganglia, higher structures of the brain, work in concert with the spinal cord to refine coordination. They analyze feedback from the body and adjust ongoing movement, ensuring smooth transitions and accurate timing. The cerebellum, often called the little brain, communicates continuously with the spinal cord, sending corrections through descending tracks to modify muscle activity. If the body sways too far, if a step lands unevenly, or if an object slips from the hand, these corrections occur instantly, guided by signals that pass through the spinal cord's pathways. The result is motion that seems effortless but is, in truth, the product of constant collaboration between multiple layers of the nervous system. It governs the control of posture, balance, and fine motor skills, the smooth transition between stillness and motion. When the eyes fix on a moving object, for example, reflexes within the spinal cord adjust the neck and trunk muscles to keep the head aligned. When the arms reach forward, the muscles of the back and legs engage in subtle counterbalance, ensuring stability. Every voluntary act is supported by a cascade of involuntary adjustments, all orchestrated by the spinal cord's silent intelligence. This interdependence allows movement to appear fluid and continuous, as though the entire body acts as one. The sensory pathways feeding into the spinal cord are essential to this coordination. Proprioceptors, the receptors that sense movement and position, constantly inform the nervous system about the state of the body. When a limb moves, these receptors send information about its velocity, angle, and tension. The spinal cord integrates this input, comparing expected motion with actual performance and correcting any discrepancy. This ongoing comparison allows for precision and adaptability, even in changing environments. A dancer adjusting to uneven flooring or a swimmer balancing against the resistance of water relies on this instantaneous feedback loop, with the spinal cord as its control center. Coordination also involves the careful timing of excitation and inhibition within the motor circuits. Muscles rarely work in isolation. For one to contract, another must yield. This balance is achieved through reciprocal inhibition, a process mediated by inhibitory interneurons within the spinal cord. When a motor neuron activates a muscle to contract, its paired interneuron suppresses the opposing muscle, ensuring smooth motion rather than stiffness or resistance. The body's fluidity arises from this principle. Every movement is the product of simultaneous activation and release, guided by the spinal cord's precise regulation of timing. Even simple gestures reveal this complexity. To lift a cup, the hand and arm muscles contract while others stabilize the shoulder and spine. As the hand closes, sensory feedback confirms the cup's weight, allowing grip strength to adjust automatically. If the cup is heavier than expected, additional motor units are recruited to maintain control. If it is lighter, tension decreases to prevent overshooting. These subtle corrections occur continuously, moment by moment, creating the illusion of perfect smoothness. Without the spinal cord's coordination of these signals, movement would be jerky, inefficient, or unsafe. When disease or injury disrupts the spinal cord, the elegance of coordination can unravel. Damage to descending pathways may leave muscles weak or unresponsive, while damage to sensory input can rob the nervous system of its awareness of movement. In conditions such as multiple sclerosis or spinal cord trauma, the loss of timing between excitation and inhibition can cause spasticity or tremor. The rhythm of movement falters, replaced by rigidity or uncontrolled motion. Yet even in these challenges, the spinal cord's resilience often emerges. With therapy and repetition, surviving circuits can adapt, forming new pathways to restore partial function. This adaptability, the nervous system's plasticity, reflects the deep desire of the spinal cord to return to its natural state of harmony. Coordination is not limited to locomotion or precision tasks. It extends to every living function. The reflexive pattern of breathing, the rhythmic contraction of the diaphragm and intercostal muscles, is regulated by spinal circuits that work in concert with the brainstem. The act of speaking, too, relies on coordinated control of breath and muscle tone, each word shaped by the spinal cord's modulation of tension and release. Even the act of maintaining stillness is itself a coordinated motion, a balance of tiny adjustments that keep the body aligned. To observe the body in motion is to witness the spinal cord's artistry, its tracts and reflexes, its circuits of excitation and inhibition, form a continuous dance of communication. The brain imagines motion, but the spinal cord makes it real, drawing strength from the muscles, guidance from the senses, and rhythm from within. Movement coordination is not merely mechanical, it is a symphony of interaction, an endless balancing act between control and surrender. And even in stillness, when the body rests, the spinal cord remains alert. It preserves posture, maintains tone, and prepares for the next gesture. Beneath the quiet exterior, signals flow endlessly through its fibers, adjustments, corrections, readiness. The spinal cord never ceases to move, even when we do not. It is the pulse of balance, the hidden rhythm of life in motion. Through its ceaseless work, the body achieves grace, the kind that is both effortless and eternal, as if guided by the softest whisper of intelligence that dwells in the core of every living form. 19. The spinal cord and sensory integration. Every moment of existence is layered with sensation, the weight of the body against the earth, the hum of distant sound, the pulse of the heart beneath the ribs. These sensations arrive in countless streams, flowing from every part of the body toward the spinal cord, where they are sorted, shaped, and woven into coherence. The spinal cord is not merely a messenger for sensation, it is a great integrator, the first gathering place where the external world and the inner body meet. Within its delicate architecture, raw impulses become patterns, and those patterns form the foundation of awareness. Sensory integration, the process by which information from multiple sources is combined into a unified perception, begins, not in the mind, but in the quiet corridors of the spinal cord. The body is alive, with receptors that monitor every aspect of the environment and the self. These receptors lie in the skin, muscles, joints, tendons, and organs, each tuned to a specific kind of input: pressure, temperature, vibration, pain, stretch, or chemical change. They convert the physical events of the world into electrical impulses, each carrying a small piece of information. When these signals reach the spinal cord, they converge upon networks of neurons that begin the task of integration. Some impulses are directed immediately toward reflex arcs, producing rapid, automatic responses. Others are passed upward to higher centers, while still more are combined with neighboring signals to create broader patterns. The spinal cord filters, amplifies, and coordinates them all, ensuring that the brain receives only what is necessary for perception and action. Sensory integration within the spinal cord relies on its layered organization. The gray matter, shaped like a butterfly in cross-section, contains distinct regions for different types of information. The dorsal horn receives input from sensory neurons, each entering through the dorsal roots. Here, the sensory fibers branch and connect with interneurons that link multiple pathways together. These interneurons are the first interpreters of sensation, blending input from skin, muscle, and viscera into meaningful patterns. A touch on the skin, for example, does not exist as a single signal, but as a combination of pressure, temperature, and movement, all processed together before the brain ever becomes aware of it. The white matter that surrounds the gray contains ascending tracts that carry the integrated information toward higher centers. The dorsal columns transmit fine touch and proprioception. The spinothalamic tracts carry pain and temperature, and the spinocerebellar tracts send proprioceptive data to the cerebellum for coordination. Yet, these tracts do not operate in isolation. Signals often cross between them, sharing information that enhances perception. When walking, for instance, sensory data from the feet, joints, and muscles must be combined to maintain balance. The spinal cord accomplishes this integration automatically, ensuring that each step feels smooth and stable, even over uneven terrain. Within this network, inhibitory and excitatory influences constantly balance one another, shaping the flow of sensation. When a stimulus is strong or dangerous, the spinal cord prioritizes it, allowing the signal to ascend quickly and trigger a protective response. When stimuli are weak or repetitive, the cord dampens them, preventing the brain from being overwhelmed. This selective attention is one of the spinal cord's most subtle functions. It ensures that consciousness remains clear and efficient, aware of what matters most, while the rest fades into background. One of the most remarkable examples of spinal sensory integration is the way it manages pain. Pain, though unpleasant, is a necessary part of survival, a warning that tissue damage is occurring or imminent. Yet the spinal cord holds the power to modulate this sensation, deciding how much of it reaches the brain. This process, known as gating, occurs in the dorsal horn, where pain fibers interact with inhibitory interneurons. When non-painful stimuli such as touch or pressure activate these interneurons, they release neurotransmitters that suppress pain transmission. The result is a reduction in perceived pain, a principle that explains why rubbing an injured area brings relief. This modulation is not conscious. It is the spinal cord exercising its quiet authority over sensation, shaping the raw signals of the body into a manageable form. Beyond pain, the spinal cord also integrates sensory input related to position and movement. Proprioceptive information, the sense of where the body is in space, arises from receptors in muscles, tendons, and joints. These signals converge in the spinal cord and are relayed to the cerebellum and cerebral cortex. But before they ascend, they are compared and adjusted locally, ensuring accuracy. If one muscle reports a degree of stretch inconsistent with its partner, the spinal cord reconciles the difference through reflexive correction. This process gives rise to the feeling of bodily coherence, the seamless awareness of the body's position, even with eyes closed. Without it, movement would feel fragmented and uncertain, and balance would dissolve into chaos. The integration of visceral sensation, the subtle signals from internal organs, also begins in the spinal cord. Receptors in the heart, lungs, stomach, and other organs send information about pressure, stretch, and chemical conditions through autonomic pathways. These signals reach specific regions of the spinal cord where they interact with somatic sensory information. This convergence explains phenomena such as referred pain, where discomfort from an internal organ is felt on the surface of the body. The spinal cord, receiving input from both regions, cannot always distinguish their origins, merging them into a single perception. This blending of internal and external sensation demonstrates how deeply intertwined the body's systems are, united at their core within the spinal cord. The process of sensory integration is not static. It adapts continually based on experience. Repeated stimuli can strengthen certain pathways while diminishing others, a phenomenon known as neural plasticity. When the body practices a movement or adapts to a repeated sensation, the spinal circuits become more efficient, refining both reflexes and perception. This adaptability allows the nervous system to learn at every level, not only in the brain but within the spinal cord itself. Over time, tasks that once required conscious attention become automatic, their sensory and motor patterns fully integrated. This is why walking, balancing, or playing an instrument can eventually feel effortless. The spinal cord has learned the patterns, freeing the mind for higher thought. Sensory integration also contributes to emotional and psychological experience. The body's sensations influence mood and perception in ways that are both subtle and profound. Warmth on the skin may evoke comfort, tension in the muscles may signal unease. These feelings begin with sensory input that the spinal cord organizes and transmits upward, where it merges with emotion and memory. The physical and emotional worlds are not separate but woven together through this continuous stream of sensation, passing first through the spinal cord before flowering into awareness. When sensory integration is disrupted, the effects can be disorienting. Injury to the spinal cord may block certain sensations entirely, creating areas of numbness or altered perception. In other cases, signals may become exaggerated or confused, producing hypersensitivity or chronic pain. Even in these disturbances, the spinal cord continues its effort to restore balance. This resilience reflects the fundamental nature of sensory integration, the body's constant attempt to unify its parts into a coherent whole. The spinal cord's role in sensory integration is both foundational and eternal. It is the meeting point of touch and motion, of inside and outside, of body and mind. Its work is silent yet profound, occurring endlessly beneath awareness. Every sensation that rises to consciousness has already passed through its gates, refined and organized by its wisdom. The spinal cord listens to the body and shapes its language before it ever reaches thought. Even as you rest, this process continues. The spinal cord remains awake, perceiving the faint pressure of the ground, the rhythm of the lungs, the subtle stretch of muscles. It never stops listening, never stops weaving the threads of sensation into meaning. In its steady activity lies the foundation of perception, the assurance that the body knows itself, feels the world, and remains whole. Through the spinal cord's constant integration of sensation, life maintains its coherence, each moment linked to the next in an unbroken stream of awareness and calm. 20. The harmony of reflexes and conscious control. Within the depths of the human body lies an unending dialogue between two realms, the reflexive and the conscious. The reflexes, ancient and immediate, act without hesitation. Their purpose, to preserve balance and protect life. The conscious mind, deliberate and aware, seeks purpose, mastery, and grace within movement. These two systems, seemingly opposite, are not in conflict, but in harmony. Together, they create the seamless unity of the living body, a structure that is both instinctive and intelligent, capable of spontaneous reaction and refined control. The spinal cord stands at the center of this partnership, translating between the swift certainty of reflex and the thoughtful guidance of the mind. Every motion the body makes is touched by this harmony. When you reach to grasp an object, the command originates in the motor cortex, a conscious decision shaped by intention. Yet even before the hand closes around the object, the conscious movement is only the visible layer of a deeper process that unfolds automatically beneath awareness. Reflexes prepare the body for action and ensure its safety, while the brain provides direction and meaning. Together they weave motion into coherence, allowing thought to find expression in physical form without risk of collapse or harm. The distinction between reflex and conscious control is one of speed and complexity, not of importance. Reflexes act first, their pathways short and direct. A sensory receptor detects a change, a stretch, a temperature shift, a sudden pain, and sends the information to the spinal cord. Within milliseconds, motor neurons are activated, producing an immediate response. Conscious control, on the other hand, requires the signal to ascend to the brain, to be processed, evaluated, and returned as command. This longer route allows for precision and choice, but at the cost of time. The body's wisdom lies in allowing both systems to coexist, so that reaction and reflection can balance each other, ensuring that movement remains both fast and purposeful. The spinal cord is the meeting ground where these systems converge. Reflexes begin and end within its circuits. Descending tracts such as the corticospinal and reticulospinal pathways send constant signals that either enhance or suppress reflex activity. This influence allows the brain to shape the body's responsiveness, adapting it to context. In moments of danger, reflexes may be heightened, ready to act at the slightest stimulus. In moments of rest or focus, they may be subdued, allowing fine motor control to take precedence. The spinal cord, ever adaptable, adjusts the balance with exquisite precision. This partnership can be seen in the simple act of walking. The spinal cord contains central pattern generators that produce the rhythmic alternation of leg movements, even without conscious oversight. Yet as soon as the brain's commands descend to change pace, turn direction, or stop, the pattern adjusts seamlessly. Reflexes maintain the rhythm, while consciousness provides the intention. The result is movement that feels natural, effortless, and under control, even though most of its mechanics unfold automatically. This blending of instinct and awareness is the hallmark of harmony within the nervous system, neither side dominant, each enhancing the other. In the upper limbs, the same interplay governs coordination and precision. When catching a falling object, reflexes in the arms and hands respond faster than thought, closing the grip in time. Conscious control then refines the hold, adjusting pressure and alignment. If the object is hot or heavy, reflex circuits again take command, guiding protective withdrawal. or distributing force. The brain does not need to calculate every detail. The spinal cord and its reflexes anticipate and adapt, freeing higher centers to focus on purpose rather than mechanics. In this way, reflex and consciousness form a continuum rather than a hierarchy, an ongoing conversation in which one acts and the other interprets. This balance extends into the emotional and autonomic realms. When fear quickens the heart or tightens the muscles, it is the reflexive pathways that act first, preparing the body for movement or defense. Conscious awareness follows, interpreting the sensation as emotion. The brain may then intervene, using breathing and focus to calm the reflexive response. This dynamic mirrors the relationship between the spinal cord and the cortex, an endless feedback loop of action and regulation. Through it, the nervous system maintains equilibrium not only in motion but in feeling, blending reflexive reaction with mindful control. The harmony between reflexes and consciousness is also a reflection of the body's adaptability. With practice and repetition, actions that once required attention become automatic, transferred to reflexive circuits within the spinal cord. A pianist's fingers, a swimmer's stroke, a dancer's balance, all are examples of learned reflexes, refined through training until they unfold without conscious thought. This transformation, known as motor learning, demonstrates the plasticity of the nervous system. The brain, through repetition, entrusts its patterns to the spinal cord, freeing itself to pursue higher creative or cognitive goals. The spinal cord becomes not only the seat of instinct but the keeper of skill, a repository of embodied memory that endures even when thought rests. When reflexes and conscious control fall out of balance, movement loses its grace. Overactive reflexes may produce rigidity or spasm, while excessive reliance on conscious control can make motion stiff and uncertain. True mastery lies in their integration, a state where reflexes provide stability and protection, while consciousness guides with lightness. The athlete who moves without hesitation, the child who runs with joy, the artist who paints with fluid ease, all express this equilibrium. Their movements arise from a nervous system in harmony, where reflex and thought flow together like the currents of a single river. Even the simplest actions, such as breathing or maintaining posture, reveal this union. The spinal cord governs the rhythmic reflexes of respiration and balance, yet the conscious mind can influence them at will, slowing the breath, deepening it, or straightening the spine. This shared control allows humans to blend instinct and awareness, using one to enhance the other. Meditation, for example, relies on this principle. Through conscious engagement with automatic processes, the mind learns to quiet the body, and the body, in turn, steadies the mind. The spinal cord's reflexes thus become instruments of calm, their ancient rhythms transformed into vehicles of peace. Within the vast architecture of the nervous system, the spinal cord serves as both bridge and mediator. It listens to the sensory world below and the cerebral world above, blending their voices into coherence. It is the place where reaction becomes refined, where instinct meets thought, where life's motions find their balance between immediacy and intention. The harmony of reflexes and conscious control is not simply a mechanical process, it is the essence of living intelligence. The reason movement feels both natural and expressive. As the body rests, this harmony continues in silence. Reflexes maintain heartbeat, breathing, and posture, while the brain drifts into dreams. The partnership never ceases. It sustains life even when awareness fades. The spinal cord remains awake, tending the rhythm of the body, ensuring that motion and stillness remain intertwined. It is the quiet guardian of unity, the conduit through which all motion, from the simplest twitch to the most graceful gesture, flows in unbroken continuity. In the end, the spinal cord teaches that wisdom does not always lie in thought, nor action in effort. True harmony arises when instinct and intention move together, each trusting the other. The reflex and the will, the body and the mind, they are not separate but reflections of the same life, meeting within the spinal cord's gentle current. There, in the calm exchange between awareness and automaticity, the human being finds its balance, a living symphony of control and surrender, moving endlessly in quiet. Perfection,